All right, seeing as it's 5 o'clock, I'm going to call the Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 Business Operations and Finance Committee meeting to order. Ms. Shope, can I have a roll call?
Yes. Greg Schneider,
Present.
Brian Nichols,
Here.
and Brian Anderson.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Item 1C, approval of the agenda. We've had that out. Any questions, concerns? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
We got a motion by Mr. Nichols, second by Mr. Schneider. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries. Item 1D, the minutes from our last meeting, those were included. Any alterations, changes, comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Greg Schneider, seconded by Brian Nichols. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That carries. We're going to move on to item 2A, our January monthly financials. And let's see here. We're going to have Ms. Elwood lead us through that.
Sorry. No, you're good. Thanks. Okay. Sorry. Tonight I'll be presenting the financial activity report for month ended January 31st, 2025. The documents were posted in board docs and made publicly available. Attached to the report are some detailed notes that I had made that hopefully answered any questions that you may have had, but I will be going over some of the highlights tonight. First on the report is a monthly summary report. You notice that in the report that the revenues are far less than the expenditures for the month of January. This is due to the timing of revenues and expenditures when they happen in the district. So revenues in districts are our major revenues in the district happen in September, December, March, and June for state equalization aid. So in the month of January, the revenues are very low. Let's see here. In January, the previous year, there was also a one-time TID payment last year that did not happen this year, and there are no property taxes coded to the general fund for the month of January because in the month of January, all the property taxes are coded to debt service. Another major reduction is due to the ESSER funds that are recorded in January of 24. The ESSER was completed in December of 24. There is also a reduction in interest. The reduction in interest is due to less cash on hand. And if we look at the detailed revenue report, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Overall, revenues compared to last year's revenues, we're pretty close to where we were last year with 32% this year and 30% last year. Are there any questions on the revenue side of things? No. Seeing none, I'll move on to the expenditures. So for the expenditures, one of the major differences between January of this year and January of last year, you'll notice that the expenditures look like they're like a third more than they were last year, because this year in January there were 3 payrolls run in January versus 2 payrolls in January of last year. And that's just a timing thing of when the payroll dates hit. Another major item on the expenditures is this $1 million purchase order that was entered for the Aldridge roofing project. And this roofing project will take place in June, July, August of this year. So part of the expenditures will be in 24-25, and part of the expenditures will be in 25-26. And one other thing I wanted to point out was in total, the expenditures compared to last year at this time are almost exactly the same. So we're pretty close to the comparison to budget where we were last year. And then for 27 fund, which is our special education fund, it's pretty close to the same as well with 42%. And 50 fund, the major difference there is just the timing and when the invoices come in. But if you look at in total, we're pretty close to 33% compared to last year. Moving back to the financial report, the cash and investment report is also on here. The major difference compared to last month's report is that I added in the PMA, the $6 million investment that we have there. The purchase orders linked in here is the detail of the purchase order for the roofing project at Aldridge. And these. And then the fund balance report. The major difference in the fund balance report is the cash assets that we have on hand are less than what we had last year. And I think that pretty much wraps up the high level. Is there any other questions?
Any questions from anybody else on the committee? Just one question. It's a general one. Just, we're through January, at least this is, even though we're in March, but just an opinion, how are we doing to budget? In your opinion, year to date, we got kind of halfway-ish through the year.
Yep, and I can go back on here. As compared to last year's budget, we're pretty close to right on where we were last year. I think where's Fund 10 here?
Yeah, I guess more so than just like where is it, because the report's going to show year over year, but like you said, there's timing things, right? So
Yep.
I guess it's more of a gut feeling of how are we doing to budget, and then, so we don't have any surprises at the end of the year.
Yep, and really good questions. So in the next couple months are the timing things when we start looking at projecting out where our salaries and benefits are going to be for year end. So in the next few months, we'll be doing that.
Okay. All right, if I don't have any other questions from the committee, any questions from non-committee members? Mr. Hankins?
Yes, Ms. Elwood, thank you. Do you foresee anything coming up in the future that might be hanging out there besides the regular day-to-day, month-to-month expenses?
I guess I'm not understanding the question because
Well,
only-
sometimes there are bills that come due that are coming but aren't on our financials of January. Talking about March, April, May, are there things coming down the pike?
Oh, for sure. I mean, in March, we have our debt payments. Those are already scheduled and put on the records for March. But as far as things that we are not aware of happening, I wouldn't.
Not aware of, but things you are aware of, but we aren't, we're not listed here. I know that we're self-insured and some of those things carried forward.
Yep. And in June, July, August, when we start closing the books, there's a lot of calculations that we do. And that's why I mentioned to Mr. Anderson that in the next couple months, we'll start doing some projections of year end and where we're at. But yeah, as far as the claims for the self-funded health insurance, those are, right now, we're pretty good where we're at. I haven't seen any huge spikes in claims, but the unexpected can always happen.
Correct. I'm not
Plan for.
I'm
Yeah.
really not trying to dig into that. I'm just saying there's nothing on the horizon that you see personally that we should probably know about coming
No.
forward.
No,
Thank you.
not at this time.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to move these financials to the full board for approval.
So moved. Second.
We got a motion by Mr. Nichols, a second by Mr. Schneider. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. And opposed? That carries. We'll move on to item 3A, the food service DPI administrative review. And let's see here.
I'll start it.
Dr. Garrison, you gonna lead us off on that one?
Yeah, so thank you so much for allowing this conversation to happen at this conversations for today. The food services review is something that we have to kind of do on a I don't say on a 5-year perspective, but on a 5-year perspective. However, we're always looking at opportunities day to day in our food services program, how we can overall be better. And so Mrs. Smith, Don Smith, and our team has put together with DPI this review for the Business Operations and Finance Committee. One of the things that we want to note is that everything that's in our review are opportunities for us to make some corrections, but they're not, how can I say, they're not all inclusive. And what I mean by that is there's things that we can always be better at. This is what DPI was able to review on the time that they were here. But for me, it's always a continuous improvement opportunity in everything that we do, especially when it comes to how we are serving our students in the food services space. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Mrs. Smith, who can kind of go over a little bit of the highlights from the report, as well as some of the action opportunities that the review is asking us to kind of take a look at. So, Mr.
Thank you. Sorry. So this is Sarah Warren, and she is the director for Chartwells. Amy Kerrigan is the DM for Chartwells, and Holly Goodwin is the assistant director. All of them play a wonderful role in our district. So the DPI mandates every 5 years. I just want to, one correction is, this has actually been 7 years because of the COVID year. So, and I did send you the last findings of the 7 years audit. And I just want to say there's no fiscal action that's taken against this school district, and never since I've been here have we ever had any kind of fiscal action for anything that, any findings that they had. So one of the recommendations is that Mr. Chady was the school food authority. They are asking to move me to that school food authority, and so that Mr. Chady's not, even though I will still report to him, it's a little cleaner, because then everything comes to me and to Sarah first, and not necessarily going through that chain. So one of the findings, and I'm going to just go through the school district part of it. So the expenses were not correctly allocated by program expense. So the FSA, which is us, did not have adequate controls. So what happened was we purchased food. None of the food in the district is owned by the district. It's owned by Chartwells. So we bought food for our vending machine for this building, and they bought the food and we paid them back for the food, but it needed to go through the equivalency factor, so they actually made some profit off of that. So that was one of the corrective actions, and the other part of that is the vending machine, which is owned by Fund 50. There is a credit card machine cost that goes with that, so those things had to be paid back to Fund 50. And then the executive director of business services, which is Mr. Chady's salary and benefits, part of that, I believe it's 8%, was also charged to Fund 50, which has been, it was just something that they've done for years and years and years, and that was just rolled over. And so that his wages also have to come out of Fund 50 and just be repaid there. I just will tell you that the vending machine at Keck has been deactivated. We will most likely either try to maybe sell it to athletics, or we'll sell the machine itself. We actually bought it during COVID when there wasn't any food, and that was the whole purpose of it. But any profits from that machine did go back into Fund 50. So, I mean, it got to the point where it was just candy bars and soda and things like that. But we are going to introduce a new program, which would be a catered lunch, box lunch, that we would offer through our catering program through Chartwell's. So, and Stephanie Elwood will be taking care of that part of it. And then one of the other corrective action is that I had to, just redo a course that I had taken once before. And so that was done. The civil rights is there wasn't a procedure for handling any discrimination. And so that's being taken care of internally. We have to post it somewhere. There is one actually out there. It's just not connected to food service. The local wellness policy, we had to add the civil rights statement at the end. They needed the full statement. There was only a partial statement on there. And then that'll come to policy tomorrow. And then there's just another clause in there that all foods sold outside of the school meals program, that was a statement that also has to be put in the policy. So that will be updated tomorrow as well. The triennial assessment needed to be done every 3 years. UW Extension and Rock County, they received a grant. They came and did an assessment for us, but they still needed us to do the triennial assessment. So that's been done, and that's on the DPI. It's on the school district website, so you'll be able to see that assessment. So let's see. And then the non-discrimination statement had to be put in the family handbook. I'm still waiting to find out who updates that now that we don't have anybody here for marketing. And then the incorrect civil rights statement was in policy 760, 760 rule 1 and 2. So those have all been uploaded to the state, and that'll come tomorrow to the policy as well. Smart snacks, there were fundraisers at the high school that weren't being logged as smart snacks. So there were kids that were selling candy bars to our auditors during that lunch period. So I worked with Ms. Pels, and she did do the corrective action herself. She did the tracking template for any exempt. They can sell 2 exempt fundraisers a year for each one of her, any kind of program that they have going there, as long as it's tracked. And then, so we will then upload the tracker into DPI so they can see that they're not competing with the National School Lunch. And the rest is kind of Chartwell's, so I'm going to let Sarah talk up to that.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for having us. Going to number 318 with Gaston Elementary. First of all, I'd like to give special recognition to Holly Goodwin. She was very instrumental in keeping this ship aright and steering it in a way that it made this review a lot more manageable. She's been through several administrative reviews with Wisconsin DPI, so she understands what the specifics are that Wisconsin is actually looking for. So she did a phenomenal job, and I'm very appreciative of all the hard work that she put into getting this audit ready. But with Gaston was, according to our reviewers, an amazing program. They gave special recognition to the physical education teacher who was very active and involved in the cafeteria when it came to the students going through the line. But what they did find was in one of our 5K classrooms, while the accountability was just a little bit off, it needs to be tweaked, and tweaked in a way that we need to make sure that the teachers and the principals have reviewed the offer versus serve training that is available on the DPI website. So Principal Lewis, she has received that training from me, and she has received the direction and we'll review it with the 5K teacher that had this issue. Also at Gaston for breakfast, we are required to offer 2 varieties of milk, 1% and skim milk. The breakfast carts, while they did have both varieties at one cart, at the very tail end of breakfast service, they did run out of what we call the golden milk. It's the skim milk. It's in a gold half-pint carton. So it only left that cart with 1 milk choice. So moving forward, we have alerted all of our staff members that we need to make sure that we have they need to increase their par milk, increase the skim milk par inventory so that all carts have ample choices of the milk for breakfast time. Incomplete breakfast and lunch production records during the week for Gaston, Merrill, and Beloit Memorial High School. What these production records are, of course, it's an auditable document. It's how we are able to track our meals, understand what the components are, what the reimbursable meal is for the day, spoodle sizes, portioning, and one of the columns we did not have completed, and that column was that Wisconsin requires the ingredients in bulk. So while we did have the ingredients filled out in pieces, we didn't have the column in bulk, meaning it was a case of chicken, but we had 150 pieces of chicken, but we just didn't put that full case down. So what we will need to do is we are going to have to provide production records for the week of February 24th through the 28th. They only want 1 week of production records just to review to make sure that we are in compliance and we're filling out the production records according to Wisconsin DPI requirements. Food safety and storage. Each site must have a food safety plan that includes standard operating procedures, specific standard operating procedures. It must be site specific. So Chartwell's Encompass Group has a huge food safety for schools binder, but DPI is requesting that it be site specific, meaning that the satellite kitchens do not need standard operating procedures for how to cook raw fish. So what Holly is currently doing right now is she's modifying the binders so that each site has exactly what it is that will be needed, because we know they're not reading that 1,000-page binder, but they will be able to access a much smaller condensed version, something that will be a lot easier to manage and to read. At Merrill Elementary, meal counting and claiming in the special education room, what was observed was that the teacher was taking the students' orders, and then the food was being delivered and not being returned. So if a student had left at some point between the start of school and lunch, that meal was given out to another student, or they were parting it out. So what we are now doing is that the order for lunch is given to the kitchen in the morning, and the lead is actually walking the meals to Mr. Smith's classroom to hand those meals out. So anything that is left over will come back into the kitchen. Let's see. Once again, at Merrill, we had an issue in the 3K classroom regarding family-style meal service. The staff was not allowing, but was not giving the students all of the components required for a complete meal. So our food service staff, they needed to be retrained about meal accountability and card collection, as well as the staff in the 3K room needs to understand what the requirements are for that accountability. So what we will do, Holly and I will do, is we're going to make sure to make surprise visits into the school to ensure that the process is continuing.
So can I just interrupt? For this for this age group at 3K, it's actually family style, so they serve it family style. And a lot of school districts don't do that, but DPI was thrilled that we were doing that with our 3Ks, so they can kind of pick and choose. But, you know, it is something that we were really proud of, that we were doing that other schools weren't.
With Beloit Memorial High School, non-reimbursable meals were served during lunch service. Under offer versus serve, students must select 3 complete components of at least a half a cup of fruit, vegetable, or a combination of a reimbursable meal. 2 students, only 2, were observed during the lunch service in the deli that did not have the required components. We did not charge those meals. We did not
Claim them.
claim those meals. But the corrective action is that we need to submit a statement that indicates the understanding of offer versus serve, and in the statement, explain how these errors will be corrected. What we have done so far is just right before this meeting, we conducted an offer versus serve training with the entire staff of Chartwell's at the School District of Beloit, actually in the deli. So we went over about an hour of really good information that we hope they will be able to take back to their schools, as well as to the deli and all of the other stations in the high school. So we will submit that training tracker into DPI. Meal components and quantities. So there was some confusion with the staff in the deli about portion sizes and standardized recipes, specifically the ounces of the meat that we were serving. 3 ounces of turkey provides 2 ounces of meat alternative. It's all very technical and numbers, but at the end of the day, what we need to do is make sure that those staff members that are operating the deli understand how to read the production records, how to reference the recipes, how to be able to utilize the scales, and continually monitor and retrain those staff members. What we have found is a lot of them tend to be really set in their ways. This is how we used to do it. Well, because Chartwell's is coming through with a whole different standard of recipes and production records, you know, it's just a training component. And as long as we continue with the continuing education and the coaching and just keep on training, I am very confident in the skill set that our staff has, and to be able, that we can walk away and know that those reimbursable meals are in fact truly reimbursable with all the correct components.
And I think that there were only 2 students that actually
Yes.
didn't have the right portion.
And that pretty much goes into number 501, offer versus serve. We just completed that training for all of our staff members this afternoon, so that they understand how to identify what a reimbursable meal is. And 1406, the most recent food safety inspection was not posted. However, it was posted just in it was posted in the kitchen, not outside of the cafeteria. So we did correct that at the time of the inspection. And all sites, we're making sure that all sites have the correct written site-specific food plan that Holly is working on taking care of. Any questions?
Is there more to go through, or do you want to save questions to the end, or do you want to?
Nope, this
You're
is
done?
it.
You're done, okay. I got a couple questions.
Okay.
So this obviously is intended to happen every 5 years. It's been 7 years. Is there some kind of a rating? I mean, would you say this is a good audit?
Yes. And I say this because from the school districts that I have serviced, I've been with Chartwell's for 17 years, so I've been through many administrative reviews in other states. While very intense, all of the other administrative reviews, Wisconsin was by far very detailed. And it is of my opinion and Dawn's that they were really looking hard to find something. So to be able to present this, I'm very proud of this report. So to be able to present this with minimal findings, I think our team did an amazing job.
So my industry is highly regulated, and
Yes.
the Fed will come in, and we know there's consequences when you don't pass things. And so we hire a company to do an internal audit because we'd rather find it ourselves than have, the actual inspector find it, right? And so whose responsibility is it in between this 5 or 7 year period to make sure the people are trained, to make sure that things are portioned correctly, to make sure, have there been any checks at all? And not just since we've had Chartwells, because that's been a fairly short period, but in the last 5 to 7 years.
So there is an audit that I do twice a year. But the audit form that we use from DPI is very different than this audit. So I'm looking more for, are the kids taking a complete meal? And it just happened to be that particular day that this was happening, because I've been out there many, many times, and they'll either correct it right when I'm there, and that's what I try to do so I can teach them. But yeah, the audits are done, and they were already done for this year, and then I'll do a second audit. But my findings are very minimal.
So are any of these things that they found surprises? Some of these things, like you said, they're looking for things, so maybe they're very technical, right? But, are we aware of it? If I'm walking through, I don't know if they're using a number 12 ladle or a number 10, right? So I'm not going to know that they're getting 3 ounces of turkey meat instead of supposed to get 2. But would either of you or whoever's going to,
So that, yeah.
be spot checking, are you trained to notice that? And
Yes. So what we do spot check. The Sono and the deli bar. We spot check. We're checking the spoodles. We're correcting the spoodles. And with the associates specifically at the Sono line, if we see a spoodle that is the wrong size, well, we're going to the production records and we're showing them, no, this is not correct. This is what you need to do. So it's not that I'm doing it. I want them to be able to have that information to be able to access and to know that there are people that are watching and paying attention.
okay. Any other committee members with questions? Mr. Nichols?
Okay, several things. Well, first of all, I don't recall, how long have you guys been our food service vendor?
Let's see, what,
This is their
2023?
This is their second year.
Second year.
Yes.
We're into the second year. Okay. So I noticed they only did 3 schools. What will they do next in 5 years?
So it depends on how many schools you have open. So sometimes they do 4 schools, sometimes they do 3. They did 3 because of how many we have in our district.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I did not see the 7-year report or the report that was done 7 years. Did you just send that today? this afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay. So 7 years ago, what schools did they do, if I may ask?
Cruzen, Robinson, and Converse.
Okay. Okay. So they only did 2?
3.
3?
Yeah, Cruzen, Robinson,
Oh,
Converse.
Fruzen, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay. The DPI needs to do a better job of describing what the acronyms mean.
Yes.
Sure.
I feel like I just walked into the Army.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
When I first started with Chartwells, it was 6 months of trying to figure out the acronym.
okay,
So
great. Well, I don't feel so bad.
you're not alone.
Okay, let's go to number 318 and 318. So both of those corrective actions are 30 consecutive days. Have those started?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How far along are you in it?
So we started February 5th,
Okay.
and we'll go through March 19th.
Okay. On both of those? Is that on both
Yes.
instances? Okay. Okay. Bear with me.
So I just want to say that when the auditor was there for this particular school, the child gave the card to the teacher turned her back, and the child picked up the meal, and that's why we were cited there, because the teacher didn't actually see the meal being taken to her seat.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. I just had a couple
Sure.
suggestions. I heard your comment about these auditors were looking for something. That's their job.
Yes.
I've worked with auditors, both financial and operational. I've worked with city, county, and state inspectors in the great state of California, and I use that term loosely. So that's their job, is to look for things, and they do, and it costs, in my case, it costs lots of money to fix. But, so just keep that in mind, that they're always going to find stuff. That's what they do, and, hopefully it's minor. And so just keep that thought as you're going forward, that they're going to look for stuff. So
Thank you.
anyway, thank you.
I don't really have any questions. It took a long time to read through this report and the one from 7 years ago.
Sure.
And again, the acronyms made it difficult to understand
Sure.
very clearly what was being said. But while there were a lot of instances that were here, most of them seemed awfully minor. Being cited because you changed the chip that you were serving with the meal. Granted, I understand why it changes some things, but some of those things I can see happening simply because you can't get the one that
Right.
you were supposed to get. So they're pretty minor, but I'm really pleased with the amount of progress that you have made already to correct all of the situations that were found. You have a plan to continue to move forward, and a plan of action to make sure we don't end up in this kind of a situation again in the future. That's the initiative that we really need to see, and really encouraged by the amount of work and effort that you have already put in to address these issues. So thank you very much for
Thank you.
all of that.
Thank you.
Any questions from any non-committee members? Mr. Hankins?
Oh, yes. No, I'm not on the committee, but I am a member of the board. I'm not sure where the district subcontracts to Chartwell. And I'm not sure where the division is. I've been in the F&B service for 50 years. I've been with 3 or 4 restaurants at the same time. I understand the things you're talking about and getting inspected. 7 years, my goodness, you guys that's unbelievable. We got inspected at least twice a year. We knew what we had to do. I'm abhorred that some of this stuff has been going on, and I don't know how long. Yes, it's great that you're addressing them, but if we're contracting a service to do this for our district, Chartwell, should have been doing it before this was notified to them. I'm very dissatisfied. It's probably, low. If we're contracting a service, the district is to whoever, we are under the understanding that they are holding the utmost standards that are the state or DPI, county, city, are to do. And to be called on it after 7 years or 2 years Chartwell's into it, you guys should have known. Spot checking, let me see if you have any records of these spot checks. I want to see some paper trail to that. This is unacceptable. These are our students. It's not, somebody turned their back and the kid got a bad piece of meat. Bull crap. I know how to run a restaurant. I know how to run a kitchen, and I know what everybody's looking at. And if you're abide by these, it's all safe serve. Every one of yours should be through the self-serve, serve safe programs that are provided, and not after the fact, before the fact. I'm appalled that we are contracting this out and we're getting called on it. I'm not looking no, it is what it is.
Okay.
It's like a inspection that I got every 6 months, a report. But Chartwell's, as a professional service, should know these things prior to them coming into your building or our buildings. I'm not looking for explanations because it is there. It's great that you're doing corrective actions, but a lot of these should not have happened prior to the fact. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. All right. And that's just a discussion item, so there's no action to be taken. We will move on to item 4A, BMHS and Aldridge flooring.
Excuse me, I'm going to need to interrupt. You're faster than I thought you were going to be.
Please do.
No, I believe that this needs to be moved to the full board for hearing. We're three of seven. We got Mr. Hankins here, so we're 4 of 7, and I think this needs to be taken into consideration by the whole board. So I move that we move this to the full board for the last meeting for March.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? I will second. Motion by Mr. Nichols, second by Mr. Anderson. Any discussion?
Just a small discussion. We're moving this to the full board for just discussion, or is there something that between now and the next conversation that the committee would like me and my team to bring forward? I mean, I just want to make sure we are prepared for that conversation.
Again, I think because of the brevity of this entire report is a 23-page report, that I think more than this group needs to see it, I think the whole board needs to see it. And so I think we owe that to the rest of the board as board members, so, and the public.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? That carries. And now we'll move on to item 4A, BMHS and Aldridge flooring needs. Mr. Bricko.
All right, bear with me here. This is the first time I'm setting this up here by myself here. What am I doing here? Slideshow. Here we go. All right, good evening. So I'm here to talk about the flooring and carpeting projects that have been slated for the summer of 2025 at both Beloit Memorial High School and Aldridge Middle School. Before I jump into this slide, I'll just refer, I didn't include this because you all have probably seen that report more than you care to see the EUA Findorf assessment report that I often refer to when I go about my capital project requests. So again, in the fall of 2023, EUA and Findorf's report, looking at both BMHS and Aldridge, their interior section on that report scored a 2.5 on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, which indicates functional and in poor condition, worn from use. So looking to tackle some of these projects this summer, I looked at the high school. I don't know if a lot of you know, but the carpeting on the ground floor was installed in 1994 during that referendum of the extension out towards the back of the river. That carpeting has been in place since 1994, so it's definitely seen the better part of its days. I'm sure Ms. Pels would agree with that. So in addition to the common spaces in the hallways throughout that ground floor, there are also 2 classrooms on the ground level that house our special needs students. It's been reported to both my team and our HES staff as well. Maintaining those carpets have just become basically impossible. Over the course of 30 years, including bodily fluid, it's just been hard to keep sanitary and fresh for our students. So in addition to that, the space over at Aldridge Auditorium is about 3,000 square foot of carpeting over there. We've had a few community members even reach out to me and have indicated these unsafe trip hazards on some of those carpeting areas throughout the auditorium. This next slide here shows more of what that ground floor, some of those spots look like along through the high school. We're looking to do a polished concrete design and refurbishment at the high school. It'd be much easier to maintain over the years rather than doing a full-on carpet replacement there. This next slide shows the current state of Aldridge, the auditorium there. Throughout the space, you have multiple tears and rips, transition points, also proving to be a safety hazard for students, community members, and staff alike. The request for proposal, the RFP that went out on January 9th, was made public for over a month. And through that RFP, which you all have access to see the details there, again, just what we're looking to do at the high school was a dyed polished concrete design, and then to replace the existing carpeting at Aldridge Middle School Auditorium. As part of our RFP and district policy, I know given the threshold of that $25,000 or more, bringing it to, of course, this committee and to a full board for vote is necessary. With this particular RFP, we had 3 contractors show up for the mandatory walkthrough on site at the high school. Of those 3, 2 submitted bids. For whatever reason, the 3rd contractor that showed up for the walkthrough did not bid on the project for various reasons. But I would like to mention it is my opinion that the administration, my team, we've done our due diligence. We've posted the RFP. It's been made public. We had 2 competitive bids, which the lowest bid, which is Mako's Commercial Interiors, also formerly known as Halverson's, was the lowest that came in at $70,494 for both the high school and Aldridge. And I believe that is the end of my presentation there. So I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions by committee members?
Just a comment that I retired from BMHS in 2018, and the carpet was overdue for replacement at that point in time. A number of years before that, I had been at Aldrich and had been in that auditorium, but it was in really bad shape at that point. So it is way past due for both of those to be replaced for safety factors.
Mr. Burko, just to confirm, this is something that's in our current budget
Correct.
and would be covered in the current budget, or would this also be something that might be, you're not going to lay this over?
No, this is a good question, Board Member Anderson. This is in the current budget. We would not straddle this over into FY26. This would be covered in FY25.
And would you do it, wait till the summer to do it? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
We would wait for the summer to do it. We know Aldridge, of course, with the roofing project going on, that building is vacant, so it's an opportune time to get as much work as we can done there. The summer school folks, as we know, the high school is going to be used for our summer school programming this summer, but they're aware of the spaces that will be sort of off limits while we get the flooring on the ground floor taken care of.
Any other questions? Any other questions from non-committee members? All right. Hearing none. The recommended action is to move this to the full Board for Education. I would entertain a motion to do that if someone would care to make it.
So moved.
Second, with the recommendation for approval. That we would recommend to the full board to approve this as an item.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? That carries. Thank you. Move on to item 5A, next meeting date, The Business Operations and Finance Committee will meet Tuesday, April 1st at 5 p.m. And the next item is adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And opposed? That carries. So we are adjourned at 5:50. The regular business meeting will begin promptly at 6.
Mrs. Shope, are you about ready? Okay. Good evening. It is 6 p.m. This meeting of the regular board meeting, Tuesday, March 4th, will come to order. Mrs. Shope, may we please have a roll call?
Yes. Megan Miller. Present. Tom Hankins.
Here.
Brian Anderson.
Here?
Brian Nichols.
Here?
Amy Levy.
Here.
Greg Schneider.
Present.
And Tia Jensen.
Present.
All members are present.
Can we get an approval of the agenda, please?
I would move to approve, but I'd like to pull 7G from the consent agenda for further research that I'm working on.
Okay. Any other changes?
Actually, could we remove item 7F? The minutes are incomplete. And then also, could we remove the addresses for the participants who, for the public comment participants?
Okay, so an approval of the agenda with the removal of 7G, 7F, F as in Frank, and the addresses from the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Greg Schneider. All in favor?
Actually, I have my hand up for discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No worries. Just for clarification, do you want the item removed so that we can discuss it, Board Member Nichols? Or are you saying you?
No, remove to move to the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. Tonight, for the Pledge of Allegiance, we have the members of the Girl Scout troop from Todd Elementary, who will be introduced by Principal Sam Carnes.
All right, so we have Troop 7632. I did want to give a round of applause to the families that got him here on a rainy day, so if we could give them a quick round of applause for that. So at Todd, we have a lot of different uses for our building. We are a community school, and so we had the Girl Scouts come in and provide some information at an open house. And so these young ladies here are here to do the pledge tonight, but their families got together and said, you know what, we want to start a Girl Scout troop at Todd. And so I know maybe later, I don't know if they're going to try to sell you some Girl Scout cookies, but I have already bought my caramel delights for right now. And I know I have to ration myself because I'm going to have to buy one from each student here. But without further ado, I want to introduce Troop 7632. They've been meeting today is Tuesday, every Monday for quite some time. And I know that they've been working on some different projects. So I thought that this would be a good project. So I'm going to invite them to come do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to lower this here. So girls, y'all come around this way. And we'll ask y'all to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, y'all come around because I'm going to help y'all out a little bit because I do it every morning. All right, come on in, Akira. Yeah. All right, are we ready? So we'll put our hand on our heart and I'll start you guys off. Are you ready? All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
She's doing our PA announcement too. So they're going to put me out of business because I do the announcements and we do the pledge every morning. So now I'm going to have to come pull y'all next week to help out with that. All right. We're going to pass it back on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Principal Carnes and the Girl Scout troops. We really appreciate that. Tonight's Board President report. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time and interest in the School District of Beloit. I have received lots of positive feedback on the Hackett School report that Principal Ryan McReynolds presented at our last regular board meeting on February 18th. Having our principals update us on continuous improvement plans and changes to address areas of concern helps us board members have a better understanding of each school's unique needs and helps families and the community to know how each building is making improvements in academics, student behaviors, and school spirit. Unfortunately, we will not have the Robinson presentation tonight due to a scheduling conflict. To continue our focus on student achievement, we will see more of these updates and reports in the future. The winter map test report results are available, and I have asked Dr. Garrison to give us a report on this data soon. Dr. Garrison and I have spoken about the response to the school perception survey presented in January. He is looking into getting a report from school perceptions as suggested. It is important that we determine what to do with the data to best address the concerns of our employees. We greatly appreciate the staff's time to fill out these surveys and the careful written responses and dedication that they have to making improvements in the school district. Referendum presentations are being held at various locations with different community organizations. It's good to see the community enthusiasm and curiosity and questions regarding our referendum. Jim Simmons held a Johnny Watts presentation at First Congregation this last week. The entire BMHS boys basketball team was present to learn about the incredible feats of Johnny Watts and other Beloit Memorial basketball stars. We were pleased to see Lamont Weaver, Kyle Weaver, and Barbara Hickman at this event. It was a proud Purple Night moment shared by all. Thank you. Next on the agenda, upcoming events and announcements. Mr. Hankins.
Thank you, Board President Johnson. Tonight's announcements and events. Good evening. The announcements for tonight, March 4th, 2025 are as follows. On Thursday, March 6th, 2025, Aldridge will be performing Beauty and the Beast. The show begins at 7 p.m. There will be additional performance on Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. at the school. On Friday, March 14th, BMHS Theater will begin its run of its original musical, Chicago, at 7:30 p.m. It can also be seen on Saturday, March 15th, Friday, March 21st, Saturday, March 22nd, and a matinee on Sunday, March 23rd at 2 p.m. There will be no school for students on Monday, March 17th, because it's Irish St. Patrick's Day. Actually, no, it's because it's Staff Professional Learning Day. Referendum information sessions will be held on Thursday, March 6th, NAACP and Concerned Black Citizens groups at the Beloit Public Library at 6:30 p.m. Saturday, March 8th, at Piggly Wiggly at 2:30 p.m., there will be a Q&A session. Sunday, March 9th, at Our Savior's Lutheran Church. Dr. Garrison will be addressing the congregation after the service. Dr. Garrison, you know what time the service starts at?
I'm not supposed to be there at 8:30.
Just wondering.
So I know I'm supposed to be there at 8:30, but I believe
It's like okay.
So I'm not 100% sure when the service starts, but I'll probably be there right from the beginning.
Monday, March 10th, at a PTO session at Aldridge in the IMC at 5. Wednesday, March 12th, will be a session for LULAC at 5:30 p.m. here at Colac. Thursday, March 13th, at Dita's on the west side at 11:30 a.m. for the community. Also on Thursday, March 13th, at the Beloit Historical Society at 5:30 p.m. for the community. Monday, March 17th, at BMHS in the auditorium at 5 p.m. will be a session for any civic theater member, PAPAS members, or band booster member. For other information, please go to our district website and click on Referendum 2025. There's an enormous amount of information on the district website, and keep adding to it. Future board meeting dates include tomorrow night, policy meets at 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, March 18th at 5 p.m. is TLE and People Services Committee, followed by a regular board meeting at 6. Just a reminder, April 1, Election Day is for council, board member, and the referendum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins. Next up, we have our recognitions. Tonight, we have recognition of winter sports. Dr. Garrison?
Yes, thank you so much. And one of the things I wanted to say is to the athletes, we know that school athletics are important because of a variety of different reasons, and we're here to, congratulate some of our student athletes and some of their accomplishments, and in the fall and in our fall and winter sports seasons. We know that athletics teaches more than just, a sport. Life skills, of course, self-discipline, confidence, leadership, and I can go on and on. Health, right? And so academics as well, time management, and again, I can go on and on. The goal of this conversation is, again, to congratulate our athletes on some of their accomplishments. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gratz, and he'll go on and take us through that conversation.
Thank you all for having me. I wanted to go through our high school state qualifiers, state level award winners, and major milestones throughout not only the fall, just hit on a few that we missed earlier, but also in the winter. So what's interesting about sports is our voting. So for example, we have not voted yet for winter sports on all conference, all state, all those things. So we'll get to hear hopefully more of those later this year. But catching up on some of these fall ones that we missed at the all state level. In boys soccer, by the way, if you're here, and I know some aren't, we still have practices happening. If you're here, just stand up briefly. For boys soccer, Beckham Deneau was named the Wisconsin Soccer Coaches Association All-State team as a goalie. Beckham also set the school record for career shutouts as a goalkeeper with 22. In football, Tucker Sherrod. Tucker, stand up. Tucker was named Wisconsin Football Coaches Association All-Academic State Team. Just kind of wrapping up, putting a bow on our fall. We had in our combined sports in the fall, we had over 25 athletic and academic all-conference as well. And so there was a lot of positive things coming from our fall sports. Jumping to our winter sports, our boys basketball team, Amari Hereford, broke the 1,000 point mark very early in the season. That's a pretty huge milestone. And an even larger milestone is he set the all-time scoring record recently with 1,134 points. Excuse me, the previous record was 1,134 points. Amari is a junior, and so that record will continue to be extended, and he'll be our all-time scoring leader likely for quite a while after this. He is still at practice, as Beckham is. In boys swim, we had 2 state qualifiers, Aiden Greenlee. Aiden was a state qualifier in the 100 fly and broke a 45-year-old school record in that race. It was exciting to watch. So congratulations, Aiden. Charlie Zimba. Charlie was a 4-time state qualifier, this year qualifying in the 50 free. In girls basketball, neither are here, correct? Lenasia Du Bois scored her 1,000th point this year. And then Jocelyn Tibbetts as well scored her 1,000th point against Westosha Central. She also set the career school record for threes made in a season and threes made in a single game. So exciting for our girls basketball program. And then Owen West. Owen qualified for state wrestling, just competed this past weekend at 132 pounds. As I said, there's definitely going to be more winter celebrations to be talked about. We meet tomorrow night for our all-conference. Those likely won't be released for a couple weeks yet. And then obviously we still have our basketball team, boys basketball team still playing. Friday night they'll be playing at Middleton if anybody would like to join that. Last piece, because this is something that is new over the last few months and has been providing an incredible amount of value, I wanted to celebrate our 16 student athletes that make up our BMHS Student Athlete Leadership Committee. These individuals were nominated by their coaches and peers to this committee. The group is tasked with being the voice of their peers to assist with shaping all athletics, clubs, activities, and extracurriculars directly pertaining to student athlete well-being, as well as generally guiding our decisions out of the athletic department. We take a lot of feedback, a lot of things that they tell us in the meetings that they meet in weekly, to try to just make things as positive as we can, make experiences as positive as we can out of our office for basically anything that is after school. That group has been instrumental in quite a few changes. They meet during their flex period once a week, and they're led by two of our teachers, Brian Deneau, who is here, and Henry Kremnitzer. And those individuals are, the student athletes are as follows. Miguel Aguilar, by the way, if you're here, stand up just for brief recognition. Miguel. Marcus Allen, Namer Brooks, Rylan Cullen, Rodrigo Delgado, Arthur Duffy, James Ford, Mara Hereford, Brooklyn Hereford, Asharia Cook, Xavier McBride, Adan Munoz, Mike Nora, Jacob Pop, Camille Thomas, and Owen West. Thank you.
So, sorry.
Go ahead, Mrs. Levy.
Thank you so much. I will be brief. Again, congratulations to everyone who is recognized. We are so proud of you. And to our athletics and activities director, thank you for organizing a fan bus for Friday. I love that that is happening, and I would love to see more of that so our students can support each other at these milestone events. So thank you so much for that.
Any other board members? Dr. Garrison?
I would just like to say, to all the student athletes, these recognitions, sometimes come when you expect them, and sometimes they don't, right? And so hopefully this was an unexpected accolade that you all received today. I appreciate everything that you all do for the school district of Beloit. From the bottom of my heart as a superintendent, I think the work that you all do both on and off the court is very important to the success of our school district. And so I want to say thank you, and of course to the parents. Let me just say this, if your mom or father or guardian is here, I think we should clap for them as well. Parents. It goes without saying that the work that you all put in with your kids is also very important to the school district of Beloit, and I want to say thank you.
Mr. Hankins?
Yes, just a comment to our new AD. I am so impressed with you jumped into this new position, and with gusto, and going to turn things. Nothing disparaging about anything before, but you're leading us in the right direction, and I applaud your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Athletic Director Gratz, thank you so much. And again, we are pleased to have you here. Principal Pels, thank you so much. And we really appreciate everything you're doing. Coach Deneau, Coach Michaels, very impressive. And to the students, thank you so much. You really, you help inspire us, you help remind us why we're here and what we're doing and help keep us focused. And I want you to know we're here for you. What we're doing, we're doing it for you to make the school district better and to try to keep our programming and keep these great sports going. And I just really appreciate you guys coming out tonight and continuing to persevere in your dedication. I really appreciate that. It's Purple Knight proud. Thank you. Yeah. Our next agenda item, public comment. Mrs. Shope, do we have any public comments tonight?
I have 2 in the room.
Okay. Members of the public are welcome to attend all open meetings of the Board of Education. Individuals attending board meetings are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and courteous manner that models appropriate behavior for our students. Individuals wishing to comment are expected to comply with the norms found on the back of your comment cards and in Board Policy 187, Public Participation at Board Meetings. We ask that each of you contribute to maintaining a respectful and orderly meeting and prevent discussing confidential matters in a public forum by following these norms for public comments during board meetings. Thank you for your participation and courtesy. Mrs. Shope.
The first person I have is Juan.
Hello, my name is Juan Romero. I want to take this time to encourage a well-rounded discussion about the future of the abandoned middle schools, the abandoned middle school building on the west side of McNeil. Our districts face financial challenges, including a budget reduction of over $11 million in the 24-25 school year, which resulted in unfilled teaching positions, larger class sizes, and fewer resources for students and families. Naturally, selling the building may seem like a practical option to bring in immediate funds. However, I hope the board's taking the time to consider not just the potential short-term financial relief, but also whether the sale would make significant impact on our district's overall financial deficit. At the same time, repurposing the building for community use could provide some long-term benefits. Adaptive reuse of vacant school buildings have shown to revitalize neighborhoods, attract businesses, and strengthen local economies. In many cases, reusing existing structures is also more cost-effective than demolishing or constructing something new. One possible repurposing idea is a student health and wellness center that could provide physical and mental health services. School-based health centers, HBHCs, they've been shown to reduce absenteeism, improve academic performance, and help students receive the care they might otherwise go without. Additionally, long wait times for diagnostic services, often anywhere from 12 months to 3 years, for conditions like autism, for example, from my personal experiences, can delay crucial early intervention, which is known to improve long-term outcomes. If the board were to consider use like this, it could have a long-lasting impact on students and families in our community. However, I understand that repurposing also comes with challenges such as ongoing costs and finding the right partnerships to sustain the project. That's why I encourage the board to fully weigh both the options, whether selling the building will truly make meaningful financial impact or repurposing could provide longer, greater term benefits. I'm not here to advocate for one specific outcome or the other, but rather to just ensure that all the options have been considered before a final decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Schultz?
Next, I have James with Melissa yielding her time.
Hello, it's nice to see a lot of my students here doing their government meeting project to make sure they get it done on time, so making the audience larger. My name is James Hoy, and I'm co-president of the Beloit Education Association along with Melissa Rohrbeck. Tonight, I'd like to address the board and the community as a whole about the upcoming referendum. As we all know, a much-needed referendum has been needed in the past, and it's failed. The community has spoken and made it clear that the focus needs to be on three things: increasing student achievement, enhancing student behavior along with students and staff safety, and supporting teachers. The BEA shares those goals. Melissa and I are both parents in this district, and we share those goals as well. However, achieving those goals requires more than just good intentions. It requires action, and that action is the passage of the upcoming school referendum. The BEA understands the concerns of many people in our community. You want to see a stronger, more successful educational environment, and we wholeheartedly agree. The truth is that for meaningful improvements to occur, we need the necessary resources to support both our students and our dedicated educators. This referendum is our opportunity to make that happen. Here's why your support is crucial. Improving academic achievement. To truly see academic progress, we must ensure that our schools have the tools, programs, and staff to support diverse learning needs. The funds from this referendum will enable us to maintain what we are currently doing. There have been improvements in academic achievement. But without this referendum, teachers will be cut, class sizes will increase. How is that going to support the goal of improving academic achievement in this district? 2, enhancing student behavior. The community says they want to see the code of conduct enforced and they want to make schools safer for students and teachers. But without this referendum, building level student service personnel will be cut. Social workers, counselors, psychologists. Those are the people on the front line of dealing with student behavior, especially in the elementary buildings. Assistant principals will be cut. I know that there's some disagreement in this community of whether all schools need assistant principals, but let me tell you, they are on the front lines of student behavior every single day. If we have to cut these student service personnel and assistant principals, who is going to support those teachers when they have students who are struggling with behavior? How is this going to support the goal of enhancing student behavior and school safety? And 3, supporting our teachers. Our community says that it wants to support its teachers. However, many teachers feel under-resourced and under-supported. The referendum will provide additional funding to keep class sizes where they currently are. It will also provide funding for competitive salaries and help attract and retain high-quality educators. The district has already not been able to give cost of living increases the past few years. On top of that, insurance costs have increased for employees, which really results in a pay cut. Without this referendum, the district has already said that it's most likely going to have to freeze pay for everybody and increase insurance costs. How does any of this support the goal of supporting our teachers? If this referendum fails, the district will need to find another $6.2 million to cut next year, followed by an additional $8.9 million the following year. These cuts will be on top of the millions of dollars already cut over the past few years. There is nothing left to cut that will not have a major impact on students and staff. I know that some people in the community believe that maybe not enough cuts were made here at COLAC, but we could cut all of COLAC and shut the building down, and you're not going to cover the $6.2 million you need just for next year. I've seen some opponents of the referendum say that, well, we should wait one more year because they're uncertain of how the school board election is going to shake out. But if that is your stance, can you really say that you support students and teachers? If that is your stance, you are saying that it's okay for students to have larger class sizes for one more year. You are okay with having less staff available to handle student behavior issues. You are okay with teachers receiving a pay cut for one more year. We can't wait one more year for this referendum. We ask you to consider the long-term benefits that this referendum will bring, not just for today, but for future generations. Together, we can support an educational environment that allows every student to reach their full potential and every teacher to succeed in their vital role. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Shope, were there any email? Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item are reports to the board. First up, we have the Teaching, Learning, and Equity and Pupil Services update by Chairperson Greg Schneider.
Good evening. During our last meeting on February 18th, we had a presentation from Jessica Austin, who is the Director of Early Brain Development at the State Line Community Foundation, on Literacy for Life, a community organization that is helping build early brain development and literacy skills for the youth in Beloit. Her PowerPoint presentation is available on Board Docs. Also, Jeff Stenroos, Director of CTE and Alternative Education, shared information on a proposed new elective course for the middle schools called Computer Science for Innovators and Makers. This class provides students the opportunity to develop pre-engineering skills and help them move into careers in the future. Melissa Beavers, the Executive Director of Pupil Services, led a presentation on the recommended changes to the promotion policy on retention as required by state law. We look forward to our next meeting, which will be on Tuesday, March 18th at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Schneider. Next up, we have Business Operations and Finance Update by Chairperson Anderson.
Thank you, Board President Johnson. So the Business Operations and Finance Committee met earlier tonight. We touched on the January monthly financials. We did move to the full board tonight for consideration, and you'll find that in the consent agenda. Also in the consent agenda was the Finance Committee's recommendation for the high school and Aldridge flooring needs. So we'll touch on that again in the consent agenda tonight. The last item was a review of the food service DPI administration review. Had a great discussion there, and the committee also decided that we're going to move that for discussion to the full board at possibly at the 18th meeting of later this month. And our next meeting is Tuesday, April 1st at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Chairperson Anderson. Next up, the legislative update. Board Member Miller.
Thank you so much. Dr. Garrison, can I trouble you to, I forwarded you an email with the PDF. Would you mind putting it up on the screen? Because there's just something I want to kind of demonstrate, if that's okay. Sorry to ambush you with that. While you're doing that, I appreciate it. I'll just start going through. So just a couple of things. Thank you. That was really quick. Thank you. Okay. So on the bottom there, you can see there are just some very, very broad brush highlights. I would encourage everybody here and at home to take a thorough look at what the proposed budget looks like. That was revealed from Governor Evers. I think it was like last week or the week before. So sorry, weeks are all running together in my head right now. Anyway, so Governor Tony Evers proposed that 2025 should be sort of dubbed the year of the kid. And it is the most aggressively pro-public education budget we've seen in a very long time. And sadly, despite that, like it still is like drops in the bucket for what public schools really need, but it's a fabulous, fabulous start. So just a few highlights, because I know as soon as we start talking about school funding, people have questions about property taxes. So I wanted to lead with the fact that all of Governor Evers' proposals are coupled with property tax relief for people who tend to be on I just spaced on the word, but on, like a limited income, right? So people like seniors, veterans, other people who aren't gonna like see big raises, right, in their income, would see, I think he's got like millions of dollars put in there for property tax relief. If you wanna get the PDF that Ms. Shope is gonna be kind enough to post for me at the end of the meeting, where it says read more here, you can read much more detailed information from that article. But yeah, just broad brush. Okay, so 60% reimbursement is in there for special education in year 1 and year 2 of the budget. It is not the 90% that Dr. Jill Underley proposed, the state superintendent of DPI, but 60% does get to that original amount that was promised but never delivered by Governor Tommy Thompson back when they initially like froze revenue limits. So, Dr. Garrison, if you want to just, nope, you're good. If you want to scroll back down to the That's okay. I'm still kind of up there. So I appreciate you, but I promise there's a reason for it. Okay. Anyway, cool. So there also included in the budget is a proposed per pupil increase. Right now it's 325 in addition per student per year. It would increase to 334 per student per year in year one of the budget if it were to pass with Governor Evers' recommendations, and 345 per pupil in year two. There's also an allocation of about $856 million to the UW system, which I wanted to highlight because many of our students can participate in grant opportunities and scholarships. It's important for us to have a very K-16 mindset in public school, and $3.4 billion overall to DPI. Of course, there are other things in there that I wasn't able to delineate in a timely manner. Now, I just want to be really, really clear before I get to the other fun stuff here. These are the governor's proposals. What's going to happen now is all of those proposals go to the Joint Finance Committee. The Joint Finance Committee contact information and a list of all of them are like in this report further down. We'll get there in a sec. They're going to basically like take this budget proposal, tear it to shreds, redo their own version of it, and it's not going to look this positive for public education in all likelihood. So if you feel strongly that we should get these things that the governor has proposed, I would encourage you to contact members of the Joint Finance Committee. Usually how this works is these things are passed like in the middle of the night, like on June 30th, out of the light of day. So it's a tough sell. It's not promised that we'll get these things, but it would be amazing for not just Beloit School District, but for all kids in Wisconsin if these proposals were to go through. So if anybody is interested, I also linked the Wisconsin Public Education Network statement on the proposed budget, and I think they do a really nice job, very concisely kind of giving an overview of really what this means. And any students who are in the room, I would encourage you to take a look at it. It's very short, and it's a really great way to help understand kind of some of this budget stuff. So Dr. Garrison, thanks for humoring me. There's a list here of bills that passed the Assembly. A few things of interest have to do with like a cell phone ban in public schools. So anybody who feels strongly about that can read more about these. I just have it bullet pointed down. There's some stuff in there I think that's high interest to people, including cursive writing. So these are things that haven't passed yet, but they have passed the Assembly. And then there's a few bills circulating that have to do with some high interest stuff. So I'll let you kind of read through those on your own. But what I really wanted to highlight, and Dr. Garrison, I think you were there a moment ago. If you go down to it's page 5 where it says Day of Action, just since we've just heard a public comment about the referendum, just to highlight for you what the state of public education funding is right now. On February 28th, the Wisconsin Public Education Network held a day of action at the end of Public Schools Week, which is last week. What we're about to scroll through is a list of school districts. These are just the school districts that have had to go to referendum only since the last budget passed, which was in 2023. So this is like 2 years. So if you could slowly scroll down there, you see that scroll in the picture? I don't know if it's clear to see. They basically like wrote down all these school district names and like dropped them down on paper, and it went 2 stories down from the Capitol Rotunda and reached forward. Dr. Garrison's doing a fabulous job of like slow scrolling through this giant list. This is just since the last 2 years. These are all of the school districts that have gone to their communities to say we don't have enough to give our kids what we need in the last 2 years. So for context, Beloit is not alone in really needing to pass a referendum. If you scroll down to that last one, thank you so much, Dr. Garrison. I really appreciate your cooperation. There are some upcoming listening sessions. If you would like to have your voice heard by lawmakers at the state level, you should please plan to attend one of these events. So I have to read on my own here so I can actually see. Okay, so the next one, there was actually one, not tonight, there was one last night. There's one next Monday, March 10th with Mark Spreitzer, Ann Rowe, and Brianne Brown. That's from 5:30 to 6:30 at the Janesville Library at Hedberg. There's another one Monday, March 24th with Mark Spreitzer and Ann Rowe, and that's from 5:30 to 6:30 also at the Janesville Public Library. And then right after the election, on Thursday, April 3rd, there'll be one with Representative Clinton Anderson. I'm not sure if other people will be attending that one from 5:30 to 6:30. And then lastly, please don't forget to vote. We are going to the polls April 1st, not just for Beloit City Council, the school board, and the referendum, but there's also a state Supreme Court justice election for Wisconsin. There's also the election for state DPI superintendent. So that concludes my legislative update. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there any board questions? Mr. Hankins.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Yeah.
The Joint Finance Committee, do they overlap with anybody in our district? I mean, representatives from us? I understand we have to get to those people, and I understand you gave us a nice place to go to voice it, but answer that question for me. Thank you.
That is a fabulous question. I'm glad you asked that, because if you know anybody that lives in any of their districts, you should definitely talk to those people, because they're more likely to listen. Because sadly, no, none of our representatives get to sit on the Joint Finance Committee. And it's also, well, there's a lot of things that I could say the Joint Finance Committee, but I'm just not going to go there. But the list is there. It's on page 4 of the update. That's a really good point. I should list for future updates, all of their home districts or cities. I don't have that on there, but they're all hyperlinked. So anybody who wants to play with this PDF later, you can just click and it takes you to kind of their homepage, and it gives you information about their district, their contact information, et cetera. So thank you.
Is there nobody, I mean, I don't want an exhaustive read, but is there people that jump out? I mean,
So people who are likely
like
to
me,
be friendly.
I want to hear a name, not look.
No, sure. Okay, so there's the list of the full committee. I mean, are you asking which people would be likely to be sympathetic to a pro-public education budget?
For this area, yes.
For this area, I mean, so again, none of our representatives are on there, but people who have a reputation. I mean, one person that jumps out, or I guess there are two that jump out as being very positive public education advocates, are Senator Royce and Representative Andraka. And that's not to say that others aren't or are, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Thank you so much.
No, great questions. Thank you. Anybody else have any?
Any other board members? I do have a question. You had mentioned April 1st is the day at the polls. Do you know when early voting starts here in the city of Beloit?
I sure don't, but we'll find out in a moment and jump in if that's okay. But if anybody ever wants to find that information, you can go to myvote.wi.gov, and if you put in your name and your address, not only does it tell you your polling location, it tells you what your ballot looks like. It gives you all the information you could possibly want or need. So I'll look that up now, and then I'll jump in. Go ahead. Thank you so much.
Sure. Vice President Nichols.
Don't take this to the bank or to the polls, but I think early voting is done 2 weeks, and that ends on Friday before the election is early voting. And I did see that the absentee ballots that want absentee ballots are mailed tomorrow. So.
Thank you.
That's all the information I have.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Our next item is the sale of real property. Dr. Garrison will be presenting, and the purpose of this is to request approval for the sale of the following properties: the Wright School, the McNeil Middle School, and land located on 4th Street. The district is also considering leasing 1430 4th Street, the operations building. Dr. Garrison?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. One of the things that I wanted to just bring note to is that due to a variety of different reasons, we of course have these opportunities before the board today. I want to bring attention to just a few things before we really kind of delve into any questions the board may have that we could possibly answer as a school district administration. One of the things that I want to bring just attention to is that the buildings that we currently have for sale are, well, I shouldn't say for sale, vacant, are buildings that, of course, are near and dear to the public in many different ways. And I want to acknowledge that. I think it's important that I start there, because I think sometimes, when we're talking about buildings and people and, people spend their lives in, naturally that could, bring up different types of, not just emotions, but more of like a history there. And so I understand that this is a conversation that we need to, of course, be very sensitive around. But we also have to look at, some of the future opportunities that our district has to look at as pertains to these buildings and them being vacant. Secondly, I would like to say, when we're thinking about the buildings that we currently have that we're talking about today, this is not the first time the school district of Beloit has had buildings up for vacant. Some of us remember Morgan, some of us remember Burge. Some of us remember Royce McGlenigan, Lincoln Junior High. Lincoln Junior High.
Waterman Elementary.
Waterman Elementary, yeah. Roosevelt, also known as the old Colac building. And again, one could argue the list could go on and on. I just want to make sure that, in this conversation today, that I do want to recognize that, again, that these buildings do hold some significance, some value to our public from a variety of different reasons, especially people who have traveled through these conversations. And over my time being here, I've learned a few things about these spaces that we've occupied. I've learned from board members. I've learned from community members. Let me start the clock. Sorry. I learned from, sorry.
I'm sorry for interrupting, Dr. Garrison. I'm just noticing some droopy eyes out in the audience, and I want to let the students know, unless you are here for a class assignment, you don't have to stay if you don't want to. Some of you look like you could use a little sleep. Okay, I know we're not terribly exciting. We try to be, but you are excused.
Can I go too?
No.
And so, again, thank you, Mrs. Johnson.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. And so, as we kind of review some of these conversations today, again, we do have 3 buildings that we're looking at that are definitely vacant, and of course, 1 building that's not vacant that we are, want the board to consider as it pertains to the possibility of leasing. And give me one quick second, I can kind of stroll there. Thank you. So the first building that we're looking at that is vacant is the 1003 Woodward Avenue, Beloit. And a round of applause. Not a round. If you can tell us what building that is, anybody? That is what building that used to be? That'd be the Wright building, correct. The Wright building is 1.93 acres with a building size of 26,000 square feet. The next building that we have is our 1524 Frederick Street building. And anyone knows what that building is? That'd be our McNeil space. 27.94 acres with a little over 114,000 square feet of vacant opportunities there. And in our conversations, we've had other conversations around land that we own that is currently being, of course, serviced by our school district and the facilities and maintenance team. This land is 0.9 acres located at the end of this block here, adjacent to the Beloit Memorial High School. And then the fourth space is the space that's located right next to the Burger King, which is the 1430 4th Street building, which is our business operations building, which is a little over 2,700 square feet and a possible lease term of 60 months. And I wanted to just bring, again, attention to the community. Again, I've learned many different conversations around the importance of these spaces. We don't take these conversations lightly. I understand that, there's going to be different opinions around, what we should do with these buildings. But our district is also looking at, we had to look at our declining enrollment over time. Of course, with the declining enrollment, some of these spaces became not only available, but became vacant for the school district of Beloit. With that being stated, that is like my general snapshot, Mrs. Johnson, Board President, and of course to the rest of the board members. I am more than willing to, answer any questions. I also have here with me Mr. Bill, I call him Mears, sorry, Mr. Mears, here's with us today as well. From Caldwell Banker, and he can also speak to possibly questions around selling of commercial properties as well. With that being stated, I will take any conversations from the board for discussion.
Megan Miller has her hand up.
Thank you so much. Real quick, I do have a question, but early voting does start March 18th, and you can also vote in person on Sunday, March 23rd from 11 to 3, but otherwise it's Monday through Friday until the Friday before the election. So thanks. Okay, so we had a public comment earlier that raised a really good question. Why can't the school district just sort of like spend some resources to repurpose these buildings? Because I know even on just the board here, we've had some really great discussions about possibilities for those spaces. So Dr. Garrison, could you help kind of explain some context about why they have to be sold?
So, naturally, there's been a lot of conversations around what buildings could be used for. There's conversations around the possibility of community centers. There's possibilities around the conversation around low-income housing. There was conversations around, let's say, leveling certain spaces, and then, of course, opening it up to possibly even farmland, resale purposes, and plots. There was conversations, there has been multiple conversations. One of the things I can say is all those conversations do come with a cost. And unfortunately, and I'm saying this very kindly, unfortunately, the school district of Beloit is in a critical financial state in which these costs alone would put us back into the conversation around what we can and can't afford. We've had conversations around with other organizations, Mrs. Miller, to be specific, around the possibilities of could there be any partnerships. But in the school district of Beloit, there's also other competing factors as it pertains to how people want to spend their money. And one of the things that we do know is that, unfortunately, there's been a lot of conversations, but when it comes to actually putting offers on the table, those hadn't come to fruition. And we did open it up to anyone who wanted to come and have those conversations with us. Of course, these buildings has been vacant for a little over a year now. And so I believe as a district administration, I believe we're at a point now where we do need to make a decision around what we want to do with the buildings. Of course, the buildings do come with a cost as it pertains to keeping the lights and water kind of running. Of course, maintenance and the cutting grass, mowing. Of course, sometimes even the plowing of certain spaces due to the fact that we still own the land. I do have Mr. Bricko here with me. Mr. Bricko has been very, what's the word I want to say? Accommodating to a lot of these conversations. He's walked buildings with people. He's shared the spaces with some of possible community members who may have shown interest. But all in all, again, when it comes to making an offer, has been a lot of looking and a lot of possible discussion. But again, all of these opportunities cost money. I would love to say, as a district, maybe even if it was in a strategic plan, we had $20 million sitting somewhere, where we could possibly look into doing something different for these buildings. But we currently don't even have that in our fund balance, and we're not meeting our fund balance based off of our policy. And so with that being stated, Mrs. Miller, these are the conversations that we've had over the course of the year, but nothing has necessarily come to fruition.
Thank you so much for providing that context. And I will just say, even in times when I've been a staff member here, I've seen stuff come and go. Hopefully we can get ourselves financially in a good place, and there's nothing precluding us from offering additional services for the community in the existing buildings that we have in the future as we're stable. But I really, truly appreciate you addressing that. Thank you.
Any other board questions? Mr. Hankins?
It's not really a question, a comment, and I think it'll all play out in the next hour or so about the selling of these real properties and the transparency that I think our public wants to see happen. And I'm a firm believer that the Beloit taxpayers pay for these buildings. I know that it's costing upwards or close to $60,000 a year to maintain McNeil as it is sits. And so I'm definitely in agreement with selling said properties. What I'm having trouble with is contracting with not Mr. Mears. Why do we don't use Beloit realtors to sell said property, so at least whatever commissions are to be made stay in the district, because our district people paid for those said properties. And I would propose, and nothing against Mr. Mears, that we go back and reopen it back up and do RFPs for local realtors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins. That is a good and fair question. We do have a few policies, and perhaps Dr. Garrison can help shed some light on on this, because I do know that it's been a question and something people have wondered, how this happened. Policy 672.2, local purchasing. It reads, "The school district of Beloit shall purchase locally when goods and/or services of equal quality are available from local suppliers at competitive prices. However, the executive director of Business, Human Resources, and Operations or designee should not feel bound to purchase any item or service locally that can be secured at a savings to the school district from outside sources, nor shall they feel bound to purchase locally unless adequate service and delivery can be guaranteed by the local supplier." So that's just the policy. I don't know the history in this decision-making. But then we also have the other policy, the 672.1, the purchase/bidding requirements. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing to me. So if somebody has some better expertise, I would like to be enlightened. I would like to teach me, please teach me, because when a building is put for sale, we put a sale price out there. The broker will get a percentage, to my understanding, and and unless we know what that percentage is going to be until it's sold, we don't know what that cost is to us. So Dr. Garrison or Mr. Bricko, if one of you could speak to, are we within our policies right now?
Thank you, Board President Johnson. And Mr. Hankins. So in fact, I went back, Mr. Chady had reached out to Century 21 on February 7th with the details that the district was ready to move forward on the listing of the properties that we're discussing here. And that was addressed to Mike Marquette, who is the president of Century 21. So in the spirit of transparency and to Mr. Hankins' point, the district had pursued the local option, being as Century 21. I actually touched base with Mr. Marquette this afternoon. He had not responded to Mr. Chady's original email until today, and he followed up and CC'd Dr. Garrison on that one as well. And they are ready to come forward and provide a bid into this project as well, provided that we provide the same details, so everything is apples to apples that we did with Caldwell, meaning the appraisals and all the information that we provided to our friends at Caldwell Banker, just again, so everything is apples to apples. But in the spirit of transparency, there was that communication between the district and Century 21 on February 7th.
Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. I'm uncomfortable with hearing that Mr. Chady reached out and said the district is ready to move forward with a sale. If I understood what you just said correctly, before the board has discussed this publicly and taken a vote. Now, that being said, and at risk of putting the cart before the horse, I am comfortable with the recommended motion language, except for I think we need to pause before we consider selling 1149 4th Street. And that's the lot on the other side of the tennis courts, because I would like to give more consideration, thank you for pulling that up, that was helpful, to what restrictions we would put on that land, because it is located so physically close to Beloit Memorial, and what type of purchaser we would entertain. There are certain entities and businesses, or even a school that was not supported by this district, that I feel strongly would not be an appropriate placement that close to our children. So again, at risk of putting the cart before the horse, I am not interested in considering the sale of 1149 4th Street at this time. Thank you.
If I can, Board Member Levy, thank you for that. Just to clarify, looking back at the original email thread, there was no specification as to what action would be taken. It was just simply the district is now prepared to take action. So, meaning the board would be the final say-so. There was no specification in the original thread as to what action would be taken, just that we're ready for action.
And so I can also add to that, Mrs. Levy, just for clarification perspective as well, at the Business Operation and Finance Committee conversation, the committee did give us the opportunity to go and look into what this could look like. And so that's probably where that also came from, the February 7th. After the Business Operation and Finance conversation, we went to look for the possibilities in this space. And so I just want to make sure we just noted that part of the conversation as well, and that's on that's in our documents.
Mr. Hankins?
Again, no disrespect to Mr. Mears or anything that's gone on. I personally would like to at least pause, is what Mrs. Levy said, and I would certainly, we need to, the board needs to look at this a little bit deeper. The repurposing of Mr. Bricko's building, the op building, and leasing, we have to have a little grand plan in place here. And the selling of, 4th Street lot, I totally agree with what Mrs. Levy said. We got to make this all congruent in a long-term plan, not short-term. We should come up with a plan. The board should come up with a plan, because the board's going to be here. We're all Beloit City people. We're going to live with the decisions that we make for our district. And I would love to see pulling this off and going back to the Business Operations and Finance, and going back and doing a RFP, and then revisiting the leasing of that space, because I think we're moving way too fast and we don't know the future of this district. And to continue forward in this motion, to me, is unresponsible. Thank you. Irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Levy, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you for acknowledging that. At the risk of being redundant, I'm also uncomfortable with receiving direction from a committee that has 3 board members and substituting that for the voice of the full board, which is 7. And thank you for the clarification, Mr. Bricko. For him to say we're ready to take action, we're not ready to take action until the board votes to take action, not a committee of the board. So that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Levy. Any other board members would like to, questions or comments? Mr. Schneider.
We have known that these properties have been around for a long time, and we've talked about it briefly at different times to wonder about what are we going to do with these properties. Not that we were doing anything to take a vote or anything else, just as part of a discussion to do that. But we are far from the point of actually listing the properties at this point. I mean, at this point, we don't know what the recommended price to put them out would be. What would that cost be? What's the time frame? How is that all going to happen? So we have a lot of steps to get to before we get to the actual sale of that property. I think we need to take the next steps and at least find out everything that we need so that we have a very clear picture of, if we list these properties, here's what we can expect to get from them. I also know that, that to go and look at some of these properties, especially, McNeil, there's millions of dollars of repairs that need to go into that to be able to do anything with that building, which is way beyond anything that the board or the district can afford to do at this time. So, the option would be, if we don't sell it, then we're going to continue to pay the maintenance on it. It's going to continue to deteriorate, meaning it's going to cost more to fix it. We've had some issues with break-ins, so we're dealing with all of that. is just going to increase the costs on the district to maintain these buildings over a period of time. I think we really need to get all of the information that we need to know exactly what these properties are worth. And then that's when we can make a decision whether we want to go forward with the sale or maybe we want to delay or whatever. But we don't have that information right now.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, these are all good points, and I think on one hand, like Board Member Levy, I agree. I think there's businesses I wouldn't want at the end of the block here on Forest Street. But like Board Member Schneider said, we've got to get to the point where we can let people know that we're entertaining offers. And because until you say that, you're not going to get any offers. For example, let's say someone said, I'm going to give you $1 for that lot, and I'm going to build a great daycare center. It's something that would be complementary, let's say, to this school district, or something that, you know what, maybe we entertain that and price isn't the issue. Whereas maybe they offer us $10 million for a purpose we don't like, we don't have to sell that either. So we still maintain all of our options and our discretion as to, you know, to a certain extent of, like we can't control once we sell it, but we can control who we sell it to with an understanding of what their intentions are. So I think we've got to get to a spot where, you know, we're publicly announcing that we are entertaining offers. And I think that's just the next step. Otherwise, we can sit where we are right now forever, you know, and it doesn't move forward until we take this next step.
Mr. or Vice President Nichols, did you want to weigh in?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge, I looked back at the February 4th meeting, and there was a discussion on the real property items in the Business Ops Finance Committee meeting, but it was strictly a discussion. There was no moving forward, if anything. And is my recollection correct, Chairperson Anderson?
Yeah, what we did is we looked for a consensus to give some direction to administration to continue the process.
Yeah. And that's where we are tonight.
Mrs. Levy?
Thank you. I would love to hear from my colleagues on the board if there is a desire to alter the recommended motion language to say move approval to explore the sale of real property, because that doesn't commit us to selling as it is stated and it's just recommended motion language, I understand that, but it hopefully will allow us to garner some of the information that it sounds like all of us are interested in at least hearing.
Ms. Miller?
Thanks. Yeah, I would support that. I fully agree, you know, like with what the committee directed, I guess by consensus, the admin to do, like let's find out about next steps. We don't want to be sitting here in, you know, 2035 still having this discussion. So Ms. Levy, Mrs. Levy, if I'm understanding correctly, you would like a motion, let me just get the language. So you would like something like move approval to explore or like gather, like, I guess I just want to be really clear, like, is explore specific enough, or like what specific language would indicate the next steps that are needed and that are appropriate? And I'd like to hear from maybe, you know, my colleagues on the board on that, but I would fully support that idea.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. I have a couple thoughts. I love the idea of repurposing McNeil as either a youth center or a health center for students, mental health students, low-income housing. Those are all wonderful ideas. Housing for homeless students, all wonderful, wonderful, incredible ideas. We need money to pay our teachers. And for as much as I would love to say, let's take that on, we're a school district. We need to focus on educating our students. I would love to have wonderful, beautiful buildings for all of our students. But me personally, as one, it's so much more important to me to have high-quality educators in front of the classroom. I personally would send my son to a shack with a high-quality educator than a glass castle with poor educators. Housing and mental health needs, physical health needs, these are community issues. They fall in the lap of school districts. And if the funding doesn't follow, it's not something we can even fancy. I would love to see that happen. I have not won the lottery yet, folks. If I do, believe me, it's the first thing that would probably happen. But we're not there, and I don't buy lottery tickets regularly enough to even to even continue that daydream. I think it would be wise for us to continue this discussion and give Dr. Garrison some guidance. I'd like it to be a little bit more specific than explore. We do have some appraisals for these properties, perhaps a succinct report on the properties, price ranges, and perhaps ideas if we do want restrictions on any of the properties. I would be willing to, obviously I'm willing to accept any motion, but let's give him, instead of a broad paintbrush, give him something a little bit more specific to work with. Any other board, Mr. Hankins?
Yes, just way back into Mr. Mears and all the work he's done, and not disrespect what he's done. I think it was just a little bit premature to, and I do agree with everything that's been said. We did give direction to administration to go forward with this. I think we still want to go forward. Just slow down, and just a pointed question, Mr. Mears. Do you have a signed document that the district is, I hate to use the word. Does the district, okay. So it's kind of a handshake or you were helping us out type of thing? Okay, that's good to know, because in the end, I would think as far as transparency goes, an RFP for 3 to sell these said properties, once we get the caveats or restrictions on, especially, I think for all 3 properties, actually, they can all be different, but we should have limitations on what it can be used for and what it can't be used for on all 3. So once this board gets that intact, which will take a little bit of work, then we move forward. Thank you.
Ms. Miller?
Thanks. Just to clarify, Mrs. Levy, would you be okay with the outcome of a passing motion being to list the properties, but just to make it clear that we're not, that there are other steps to take? Is that, because I want to just make sure I'm understanding, because I appreciate what you were saying, but here, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess my only question is, and I don't know, if you list a property for X amount and someone comes in at asking or maybe even above, they want to make sure they really want to secure this property, is there a penalty for saying, you know what, thanks, but we're good, no thank you? So if the answer is no, then I'm fine with that, because we can list it, we can gather all the information, and then we can decide if we want to move forward. But is that fraudulent to say, hey, I want to sell this for this amount, and someone says, here you go, and we're like, oh, no, thank you. And again, I don't know.
Would you like to? Is that okay, folks? Would you go to the mic?
Yeah.
Would you go to the microphone so we can hear you? Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Bill Mears. That's a question that you've really run by your attorney, but generally speaking, you don't have to accept an offer. You have that opportunity to say yes or no. And also, I thought about on the deed restrictions, certainly on any of those buildings, or especially that vacant land, you can have deed restrictions on what can and can't be there. For an example, sometimes we have sell a property to say Burger King, and we have the lot next, and there's a vacant lot next door owned by the same person. The Burger King can say, well, we'll buy it, but we're going to put these restrictions in the deed. You can't put another hamburger place there. Does that follow that kind of logic? And just while I got the mic, just for a quick second, if I may, is our office happens to be in Janesville, but we don't think of ourselves as a Janesville company. We sold the Regal office building here recently. We've sold the Strong building. We work for Hendricks Properties. We're a Janesville Beloit company. Just so happens our office is there. So just like Century 21 sells houses, they've got offices in Janesville and Beloit. We're specialists. We just do commercial real estate. But at any rate, we don't think of ourselves as a Janesville company.
Thank you, Mr. Mears. Dr. Garrison.
Sure. So, and I think this has been a great discussion. One of the things that I've learned with our board is, these opportunities allow, me to, gather information and then kind of, put together a different plan. And so naturally, I think right now, it's okay. The administration is okay with pausing and seeking additional input through an RFP process to see if this is something that, to gather more information about our buildings and spaces. And it's not to say that we don't want to move forward with what the recommendation is, but it's also hearing from the board a full board around what is it that I'm hearing. And I'm kind of hearing that we're not prepared to say we want to move forward with the sale of the building, and anyone can correct buildings, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I am hearing that we want to gather more information around what this possibly could look like here in their school district with these four said real properties. And so I just wanted to put that out there that, if the board would allow, if you would like me to move forward with looking into more RFPs for these properties, I can. That'll gather more information about the real properties, and then that'll give you all more information around, what each will have to offer in a possible decision.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Megan Miller.
Thank you so much. I guess I'm not hearing any downsides to just listing. It sounds like what was just clarified is that we have wiggle room and leeway. I think it's a gesture of fiscal responsibility to just move forward on this. I used to live right behind Morgan School, and I watched it just deteriorate. It's very demoralizing. My kids used to go play on the playground there, and it was not great, not a great situation. And so, I think we also have to be conscious of the impact that we have on the community and, honor the existing financial situation that we have in the district. So, personally, I feel like my questions were just really clarified and answered. Thank you so much. I would be fine listing with the expectation that we're going to have regular discussion and touch points, I think, to address the concerns that at least that I understood that were raised by my colleagues on the board.
Any last thoughts? Mrs. Miller. I'm sorry, Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. So just to continue that thought, the gentleman did instruct us that it may be a good idea to run this past our legal, and I appreciate that. So I would be fine with moving forward with listing the properties as they're stated, with the exception of 1149 4th Street. I want to take some more time with that, as long as there is no penalty if we pull out for some reason other than price or et cetera, for some reason for other than what is listed.
And are you suggesting then going with the Caldwell Banker as the listing agent?
I am fine with that because it sounds like the other entity had an opportunity and did not reply until today. So since the opportunity was provided, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Hankins?
I totally disagree. Our finance director is not in place to say yes or no whether Mr. Marquette came through. We're losing a little chain here. and I do still believe that this should be sold by a Beloit realtor. And nothing against Mr. Mears, nothing at all. But I do think that our proceeds, or the proceeds of said building, should go back into our taxpayers' hands. Nothing against Mr. Mears. The threat has gone since our business director is not in place right now, and was reached. Mr. Bricko found that thread, and I'm glad that our former director put out to it, or the director put out to him. I'm not in any position to say why Ms. Marquette did not, and I would like to open it back up to 3 Beloit realtors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins. I think everyone has had a chance to weigh in, and we have the issue of the sale of the properties with the leasing of the operations building, and the issue of who will be the listing broker for these properties. Dr. Garrison.
So again, I think a motion, if I may, board, that could work in this space would be a motion to move approval of the listing of the real properties with the exception to an RFP process that will allow others to get into the conversation. So I'm not sure how to really word that space, but just to note, Mr. Hankins, just because we can put something out and a company may not from Beloit put in, and I think that's something that we need to note. Caldwell Banker has sold buildings in the school district of Beloit before, correct? So has Century 21 probably, correct? So has whomever, correct? X and X and X. So the board will in the end make a final decision as it pertains to who we want to move forward with. So I think a motion could be move approval of the listing of real properties and reopening the RFP process as a suggestion. So not reopening or extending the RFP process.
Vice President Nichols. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Board President Johnson. So let me clarify a couple things, and you help me if I'm wrong. But okay, so if Bill listed if Bill listed the property, the agent in town could sell the building. But if the agent and another agent in the city could list the building, and Bill could sell it. So you just keep that in mind. You typically, a lot of time, I don't know what the percentage is, but typically, especially in residential, a lot of people are listers and a lot of people are sellers. And I can't speak to that in the commercial side, but it's amazing how often somebody else sells the building that you've listed. So I experienced that when I was out west. So just keep that in mind, and whether we list it with Bill or Associated or whatever any of the other realtors in the city are, or the county, it could, quite frankly, a realtor in Illinois could sell it too, right? A realtor in Illinois could also sell it, right? Yeah. So,
You were out of the room, but my office just happens to be in Janesville, but we're a Janesville Beloit company. So I just want to make sure you get a chance to hear that. We sold the legal building, we sold the strong building. We're very active in commercial real estate. We don't sell houses.
Thank you, Vice President Nichols. Your explanation just explained a lot to me because I was unclear how similar or dissimilar selling commercial property was compared to selling residential property. So thank you so much. I appreciate that clarity. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, just one final thing as we're trying to decide what action to take. I think if the action we are seeking is to list it, but we don't know who we're going to list it with, then I think that entire motion is premature. We might as well wait and say we're going to move to approve it or to list it with this agent, and otherwise we could say, hey, let's list it, but you still can't take the action until we decide on who we're going to list it with. So it's kind of all or nothing.
Well, that would also come with, I'm just hearing from all board members in this space, that also come with the possibility of us, reopening or putting the art back out to RFP. And so once we get an RFP from others, then we could, see what those look like and bring that back to the board. The board can then decide naturally which RFP we want to go with or our recommendation, and then, kind of go from there. And then we'll move forward with a listing. At the end of the day, we have these buildings, and we have vacant buildings. And we also have a need in our district as it pertains to real financial dilemmas. And so the district administration is willing to move forward with whatever recommendation that comes from the board at this point.
Mr. Hankins, and then let's wrap it up.
Okay, just one more. Mr. Mears, I truly appreciate where you're coming from, and thank you for wading back into that. I've been on, you wouldn't know me from Adam, but I have dealt with you on other matters, but not you personally. But anyways, I have nothing against what you represent. My point is, and I think Brian Anderson went to the point, is that we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. And I do believe we've given credence. We do need to sell these properties. Once we list it with an agent, I guess. That's how it goes. We just don't say we're listing it and then find an agent. So I think due diligence being served. And I believe in selling this referendum or having people vote for the referendum, people want to see transparency. And if we sell these buildings, we got to make it open and honest. And I do believe for this board to do due diligence, to open it back up to an RFP, and not rather than saying Mr. Mears' company, and I'm not, again, nothing against them, or Janesville or Madison or wherever. But if that's what we decide on one realtor and we go forward. I don't think, and we haven't done that yet. So I think we skipped a step somewhere along the line. And I think in helping our public see that this board, is moving in transparency on selling these real buildings that they bought and paid for. And I think we'll do ourselves a good nod. Thank you.
I am opening the floor up for motions. Keeping in mind, we've got the listing agent to consider and the listing of the properties. We can either make this one motion or two, and it sounds like we may want a little bit more information from administration. Mr. Schneider?
I move that we proceed with the process for the sale of real properties located at 1033 Woodward Avenue, 1524 Frederick Street, land at 1149 4th Street, and the leasing of 1430 4th Street. And that the administration bring back to the board within a month as to the process and where we're at for that, in that, to be ready to sell.
Okay, and just for clarification, you do want the land at the 1149 4th Street included in that?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Shope, do you have that motion?
I just need clarification on the beginning. It was to move approval of the sale, or?
For the district to continue the process.
Thank you.
For the sale of the property.
Okay, thank you.
And the leasing of the ops building.
We have a motion by Greg Schneider. Is there a second?
May I ask a clarifying question
Of
before I have for a
course.
second?
Yep.
Mr. Schneider, would that, does your language, would that entail just like seeking a legal opinion? That wouldn't necessarily go right to listing? Is your attempt to encompass kind of the concerns that were raised?
To encompass all of the concerns that we raised, as well as finalizing who we would go for with a Realtor, or at least coming back with a good, recommendation for that, and knowing what
Okay, because I think that,
the listing prices would be for those properties.
I really appreciate the clarification. Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Greg Schneider, seconded by Megan Miller. Any discussion? Mrs. Levy?
Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that I understand. When you say all of the concerns that were encompassed, does that mean going back out to RFP?
Yes.
Okay. And just so I understand, so that would also include stipulations if we decided to have any for 1149?
Correct. Or for any of the properties.
Oh, I absolutely. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Our next agenda item is the 2025 referendum update. Dr. Garrison?
Yes, thank you, Board. And give me 1 second to pull up the real quick presentation that I want to share with everyone. So as we all are very keenly aware that we are in a referendum season here in the School District of Beloit, and I would like to first start off by thanking everyone who has allowed us to come into their spaces to share information about our referendum. As you all know, that list of community partners and spaces and places that we have visited is online. We still have a lot more sessions to go, a few more even yet this week. And again, I just want to thank all of the community partners who allowed us to come in and share a little bit about our referendum. With that being stated, one of the things I wanted to do is, of course, share kind of what I've been sharing in these spaces with our viewing community tonight. It is my goal to be succinct in this conversation, so I do have about 15 minutes. Some of this information the board, of course, have heard before because you've been in a lot of my conversations already, but this will allow us to kind of give us a snapshot around what we're looking at as a school district. We all know that we have a need in a school district as it pertains to referendum. That's why we went to referendum. One of the things that I want to just bring note is that we do have celebrations here in the school district, and for time's sake, and of course I have shared this with the public, I'm not going to go over each of these opportunities, but we do have celebrations in the school district of Beloit. And some of the things that even our co-chair of the BEA mentioned is in this conversation today as well. And so not to reiterate some of the things that he's already shared, we have had some experiences where we've made grounds, and we know that there's opportunities for us to continue to make more grounds in the conversation around academics. Our goal is to keep getting better and better. One of the things that I've mentioned most since I've been here, of course, academic success has been something that I've always shared. The second big point, service at the highest level, and of course, continuous improvement. And these themes, I truly believe, is being captured over the time that we've, of course, come together as an administration. And so these celebrations are, again, far and few in between. Of course, every school building also has a list of accomplishments that they've had that I'm going to share with the board. Of course, I'm also going to put that out on our webpage as well. There's a lot of great things that are happening in our school district. And again, these opportunities don't capture all of the themes, but it does let everyone know that we have had some increases across many different levels in our academics and for many different things here in our school district. I want to start off again by saying that this referendum is about our students. This referendum is about our students. We need to be able to, keep these conversations moving forward for our students, follow closely around making sure that we have the adequate staff in order to provide these opportunities for our students. And so we know that through conversations, also through the legislative update, that a lot of districts have went to referendum. So Mrs. Miller, this is also captured here in this slide. Since 1990, 86% have went to operational referendum, 86%. And the question that I didn't ask behind this question is, how many of you think have passed an operational referendum, which is the next slide, which is 77%. So these conversations are happening in the state of Wisconsin, and the school district of Beloit is not exempt from this conversation. We are not exempt from this conversation. With that being stated, we've had referendum conversations before. As we all know, our April 1st referendum is on the ballot. Of course, we've had other referendums in the state of, in our school district, I should say. And in our school district, of course, in 2023, we knew we had a need, and in 2024, we also had that need. And here we are again with the same need, just because we have year-over-year cost expenditures that we have to be able to keep up with. Inflation has not kept up with the state aid. It actually lags behind over $3,300. And so in this portion of the conversation, typically I ask the question, raise your hand if your bills have went up. And typically everyone raises their hands. And then the second question I ask is raise your hand if your bills have went down. And typically no one raises their hands. And so we've had this conversation for many, many years here in the school district, and we are now in that same space. This is the ballot question, and again, this is something that everyone has opportunities to review. Our three priority buckets, we also have a fourth priority bucket, but one of the things that we really want to do is make sure that we bring note to the staff compensation conversation and retention. We cannot do this work without our teachers. That's as simply as it could be put. And I'm not only saying that from a district administration's perspective, but school districts around the state is saying the same thing. Because we also know that schools of educations aren't graduating high numbers of teachers. And so now our teacher conversation becomes even more important because we don't want to continue to lose the current teachers that we currently have, not being able to compete with other school districts, right up the street and or down the road, in any direction. And so we have to be able to stay in this conversation, and this priority allows that to happen. We do want to be able to compensate our staff to at least 5%. Now, we also know that the negotiation process is something that we have to look at, and in the negotiation process, it may get up to 4%, it may go over to 5%, but the conversation is, we built this into the conversation. The next priority is our academics, and some of the same things that you see on these slides, where there's increases in our ERLA data, where there's 3 years of consecutive growth on our state report card, where there's gains in ACTs, our curriculums have provided those opportunities. And so there's not teaching and learning without curriculums. And I know some of the teachers in the room could contest to that. You have to have curriculums in order to do the work that we want to do. And not just any type of curriculum, but high quality curriculums that can provide opportunities for growth for all students. And the reading and the math conversations are duly noted in this priority. Again, I can go on, but for sake of time, I want to just make sure I bring note to this space. The next priority that we have has been very clear is in our behavioral support conversation. As we've had numerous conversations with our community, with our teachers, with even the administration, we know that this priority is needed in our school district. And we also know that this is something that we want to improve upon. We do have a code of conduct. And we do want to uniformly enforce the code of conduct. But just like I've mentioned in previous conversations, there's opportunities where students may get in trouble. I hate to use the word trouble, may get into a situation where we need to have some corrections built around it. But then there's also opportunities where students may fall into an intervention. And in that intervention space, these opportunities are captured with the behavioral support positions, bringing back an assistant principal, having more conversations around deans of students in the middle schools, and then adding that added layer of support with 6 additional paraprofessional support positions being added to our district. The next priority, and then just to backtrack real quick. The next overall, we know that our operational budget is very tight right now. And I shouldn't say tight, we're at a point now where we have to do some things differently, and we have done some things differently. But this gives another clear shot around what's happening at the state level. State funding has not kept up with the increase of costs. And we know that, not just based off of Mrs. Miller's conversation, but just based off of what we know about the state of our state's conversation on how we're funding schools. And this is an ongoing conversation that we have to have. This next slide, of course, gives a snapshot of the mill rate and our history. You know, we always talk about what we could have done in the past, but we are here now, of course, at the 192 space. And this is 192, but we also know that there was a tax credit attached to this conversation this year. So the 192 is the number, but we also know that that number was probably a little bit lower than that due to the school tax credit that was also given this year. Naturally, the 3 years are rolling averages, where they roll up from $9 million to $14 million to $16 million. And the reason why we rolled this into the conversation was to keep a steady mill rate, but it also allows us to capture our overall needs in our school district by just building in some of the opportunity to capture at least a 3% increase for things that we have yet to come to fruition yet. Every year is different. And so I made that statement before. Right now, let's just say, you know, the water bill is $10. Next year, let's say the water bill goes up to $15. That's a certain percentage increase. And we have to be able to prepare ourselves for these opportunities. And that fourth priority will capture many different opportunities with that. The tax impact is as follows, where we are looking at $100,000, $157,000, $157,000, and then $200,000. Each of these opportunities gives you a snapshot of what you paid or what the community could have paid this year, as well as what, with a referendum support, what it would look like for each category. But we also know, again, that even this year yet, there may be some tax credits that comes. So even with the 753, there could be different opportunities based off of what opportunities we get through the budgetary conversation. We've had to make reductions. We have continued to make reductions since I've been here. And I think sometimes this gets overlooked because it's a conversation around what else instead of what should. You know, our goal is to have everything that we need for our kids. And the more we reduce, that absolutely means that the less we will have for our kids. That's what that means. And so I would implore our community to not only come to the informational sessions, but ask questions so we can bring better clarity to any of these opportunities that you see here. What's at risk? And I want to spend just a little bit of time on this space here because what's at risk in our school district is greater than what you see on this screen, whether it be compensations, salary freezes, central office reductions again, building level reductions again, significant contract services reductions again, insurance costs possibly increasing again. All of these things are things that we've done, and we'll have to, again, bring these back to the table. And when you start having those conversations over and over, it really does hamper the culture of a school district. And we have had this conversation now for the past 3 years, okay? And again, as a school district, we're doing everything we can to keep the high service for all of our students in space and in place. But when we are having the reductions conversations year over year, it does make it that much harder. I'm gonna draw your attention to where it says programs and courses not aligned with graduation requirements will be subject to evaluation for continuation. This is a real conversation that we need to have in our school district. If this referendum is not successful, I will have to look at reductions in programs in our school district, which includes athletics. Today, we just had a conversation with athletics coming into the room, and they're sharing how great our student athletes were, which includes the arts, which includes 4K programming, which includes DLI conversation, which includes facilities conversations. These are real tough conversations that we will have to have with this referendum, if this referendum is not successful. There's no other way to say that. And I think me publicly making sure that people are hearing this from me is just the realities in which we have to actually look at if this referendum is not successful. Because behind the 6.2 is the 8.9. Okay? Behind the 6.2 is the 8.9. $8.9 million worth of reductions that we would have to take a look at. And that's, again, for 2026. There is not a referendum that we can go to again in 2025. April of this year is the referendum for that, okay? There is not a November election where we can go back to referendum. The next opportunity that we will have is in April of 2026, and by then, we will have to have conversations around not just the 6.2, but again with the 8.9. And those are very real conversations that not only the school district of Beloit will have to look at as an administration, but also as a community. And these are very important touch points that I want to bring note. Again, we have a wonderful website that I would like to point everybody towards. Please feel free to just, of course you see it on the screen, but you can actually take a picture of this and you'll be able to see it. And it'll take you right to our website where you can find additional information as to our referendum. I've had one could argue, a lot of practice at going over this presentation. I wanted to keep it to 15 minutes, Board President Johnson, and allow for any board conversation as it pertains to the referendum. But again, these are real conversations that we would have to take a look at. And again, I want to make sure that that also includes these programs and courses that are not allowed with graduation, we will have to take a look at. That also includes stuff like CTE. These are programs that are near and dear to our programming, busing, but without funding, these are the things that I would have to start looking at because we cannot keep reducing staff with 5,000 students coming to our buildings every day. We cannot. And so although that is the largest pocket of money that we have to start looking at other things to offset the 6.2 and the 8.9. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Dr. Garrison, and all of the administrators who assisted in putting this presentation together. I'll open the floor for questions or comments from the board. Mrs. Megan Miller.
Thank you. I had the privilege to attend the ad hoc committee meeting last Wednesday. It's the first one I've been able to get to. It's some stuff canceled, so I decided to come. And I listened to this discussion, and the gravity and tone in the room. I mean, this is a mess, honestly. And as I was just sitting here listening to this, is the first time I've heard Dr. Garrison deliver this specific presentation with that information. The first thing I thought of was how I came here to teach. I didn't have kids at the time, and I decided to stay here for pretty much every one of the reasons that was on that list. I stayed for 4K. I just jotted a few notes down. I stayed for DLI. I stayed for the quality of my colleagues who I'm worried we will not be able to retain with a pay freeze and increased costs of health insurance against other economic issues that are happening external to the district. And I guess, depending on what happens in April, I may or may not be a board member, but I'm still going to be a parent and I'm still going to be a taxpayer. And I would really like to see our district be able to focus on our excellence and not on our survival. And I think that you've done a really nice job, Dr. Garrison, really crystallizing that. A comment was made at the ad hoc committee about, and I think you responded really well to it, hey, we got to get all this information out there. And you were kind of well, we don't want this to be a scare tactic. And I think one of the ad hoc committee's members' responses was and this is truth telling. And so I think you've done a really nice job putting this information together in a way that makes sense, that appropriately transparently communicates where we are and that other districts are right here with us as well. This is not a Beloit specific issue. So a lot of big feelings and reactions from over here. So thanks for entertaining my thoughts and comments, but really nice job on the presentation.
Vice President Nichols.
Dr. Garrison, good presentation, good detail. Except there's one piece missing, and that's the district stability and daily operations. Could you address that? That's quite a large bucket, and I think the public needs to know that. Thank you.
No problem. And so in that bucket, we have to look at a variety of different opportunities. One is we have to look at, of course, there's food services costs that, of course, will go up in that bucket, and we will be able to capture that. And when I say food services, that's meal programs, food prep, and, of course, kitchen equipment. There's administrative and district services that covers legal costs and all district staff training, including insurances that comes with that. Special education services, which supports individualized education plans, services, therapy-assisted technology, and of course, specialized staffing. That bucket will also encompass the technology and communications. We know that even yet this year, we're looking at the cost that it'll take for us to possibly even switch over from Apple to going back to PC. So there's funds that we have to look at in the technology and the communication realm that this bucket will also address. Software, IT support, of course, and an increase in our parent information tools. Student transportation. Naturally, this is also can be captured in the operational cost. Student transportation is something that we have in our school district. Naturally, those conversations will increase over time as it pertains to how much it costs to move students from their homes to our schools, right? And so student transportation is something that we will have to take a look at. And that supports both morning and afternoon routes, fuel costs, vehicle maintenance, and specialized transportation needs. We also have to look at facilities and maintenance. We know that there are some critical things and critical needs in our school district right now that is on our EUA report. And on that EUA report, there's millions of dollars that we would have to take a look at as pertains to what is critical. And this bucket could capture some of those opportunities as well. That includes covering utilities, cleaning, repairs, and security as it pertains to just our facilities and maintenance upkeep. There's also instructional costs that's captured in this conversation. I know we have a bucket for that, about $1.68 million on the priority, Mr. Nichols, to the board, not just Mr. Nichols, sorry. But we also know that there's labs, lab materials, of course, fund balance that we typically transfer from our fund 27 to our fund 10. Special education costs yearly to the tune of about $9.5 million. And so this bucket could also help in that space. Now, hopefully the governor's biennial budget will be successful, but you all know that's not something that I can dictate at all. And so there's also employee benefits in this conversation. Naturally, we've built in at least a 3%. But in case something happens in this space as it pertains to covering health, this bucket could also capture that. And that includes long-term disability insurance, state mandated retirement contributions, payroll taxes, worker compensation. And again, if these things increase over what's built into this bucket, which is about 3%, then this bucket could actually help in that space. And so that kind of gives you a snapshot of what this bucket could provide. I know it doesn't give the details of every single penny, how it can be spent, but it does allow you all to understand that running a school district is not just one thing. It's multiple things that we have to take care of in order for this district to be successful. And the list that I just kind of rambled off there kind of gives you a snapshot of what can be captured in that bucket. Thank you.
And what is the value of that bucket?
The value of that bucket is a little over $20 million, Mr. Nichols, I believe.
How about 23,490, right?
To be exact, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other board member questions or comments? Mr. Schneider.
You know, as I've talked with people in the community, I always try to emphasize that we really don't pay for schools. We invest in our future. I mean, how many adults have not taken time to invest in their own futures? I mean, we've gone to school, we've increased training, we put money into a retirement fund, businesses invest in the company to modernize and to grow the business. You know, we all spend a lot of time investing in our futures. But when we invest in schools, we invest in the future of Beloit, because it's the students in the schools now that will be the business leaders in the future. They're going to be leading the governments, both communities, county, state, and so on. They'll be taking care of us when we get to the point that we need help. You know, so we invest in our future. So what happens now is up to, for our own personal future, depends on what we do on the referendum this year.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Anyone else? A couple questions or points that I've had conversations with constituents. One of them being, I guess, concern over the 6 behavioral support positions. Everything from, is that adequately or appropriately financed? Can we really find people to come into that position with the qualifications we're hoping to capture at that price tag? And even if we do, is this addressing the issues of adhering to the code of conduct, making improvements in the behaviors? Will this result in the outcomes we'd like to see? I guess the kind of the underlying question behind that is, if we're not following the code of conduct now, how is having 6 more people in the district that we're funding and paying for going to change that?
I think it's a great question. I think one of the things that we do know is without anybody, these behavioral opportunities could actually see even more of regression. Even in this year, we've started to see that there's been an uptick in our behaviors. Just that's what we've started to see. As pertains to any promises that can be made, one of the things I can say is that I do believe that these behavioral support positions will help us in the intervention space, as well as working with our students and staff and around how can we better support our students when they're having these situations. That's why, again, it's stated as behavioral support positions. And so sometimes students do need additional support. And with these behavioral support positions, with the adult in place, we can provide additional layer of support to our teachers and that student. And so I do believe that this priority does provide us with the opportunities to continue to work with our students in their various needs. Now, is it a one-size-fits-all? And I guess that's kind of where I lean back, and I have to say it's not. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It is not. And I'll be the last to say to you as a district administrator that this will be a one-size-fits-all conversation. Our goal is to get better each day as pertains to how we servicing students and how we're working with them through conversations as pertains to their behaviors. Not all behaviors are right at 10, if that's a level. Let's just say 1 to 5. And not all behaviors are jumping straight to a 5, 5 being the worst. Sometimes there are situations where students are just simply not following instructions and need more redirection. It leads to a referral. We don't oftentimes put it in that bucket, but it is a referral. And so I think sometimes when we're talking about discipline with our students, it must be a 5. It must be one of those big 5 themes. And that's not the case all the time. And I think it's irresponsible of an administration to say that that's what's happening in every single situation, as well as the public to assume that everything is a 5. Not everything is a 5. Let's say 5 being the worst. Not everything is a 5. But we may have some 4s. We may have some 3s. We may have some 2s, right, Mrs. Pell? And we may have some 1s that we all still have to address. And so, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all conversation, but I do believe this bucket provides us with the opportunity to better assist our teachers and our staff. Our teachers, staff, and our students. And and seeing some things become a little better. We will also report out on how these things are working in our school district on a regular if this referendum is successful.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Megan Miller?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to build off of that as I'm thinking about what you're saying and thinking about a previous referendum discussion that we had where we were talking about the mill rate and how whether or not we pass a referendum, that mill rate is likely to go up next year. So that's correct?
That is correct.
Right. Okay. So here's, as a parent, this is how this lands to me. We can pay to continue to do all the things that we're already doing that are getting us these really good academic outcomes and then get more help, like right there in the classroom to support our teachers and our kids with additional needs. Or we can pay more money to have less of that support. Because I saw on that list, student services, I saw school counselors and school psychologists. I send my kids to school because I believe that it is safe and it is somewhere that they can grow, academically and personally. Why would I pay more in property taxes next year knowing that I would have less? And so I think when I've fielded similar questions from community members who are that's a lot of money and it's really ambiguous. Sure, we've got the results. You've got that really nice celebration slide. There's more specific results that we can highlight in terms of where we are growing and what we need to sustain. Back in November, when we had the discussion about what do we want to continue to do based on what our report card said and what needs to be changed, Ms. Moratek brought back a whole presentation about yep, here are some equity issues. Here's where we're not growing enough, and this is where we need to target, right, those resources and that attention. So no one's beating around the bush there, but just going back to Mr. Nichols, kind of what your question was, what is that? And I can't remember what it's called on the marketing piece there, but just sort of just the keeping up with the operations stuff. Those dollars are allowing us to sustain what is working, and to then the dollars on top of that to address what we know isn't. So again, we're paying more money anyway. I'd rather pay more money and make sure that our teachers and our kids have responsive staff and more grown-ups that they can form relationships with, have places to go outside of a classroom so they're not disrupting learning from other kids, versus pay more for less. So I just wanted to throw that perspective in. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any other board members? Another question that I have, under the priority of academics, we have the virtual / in-person reading tutors at $180,000. I know that we have grant money that we can use for tutors. Have you looked at shifting any of that grant money for covering the reading tutors?
So as it pertains to grants in that space, I haven't necessarily looked at shifting the bucket of money from one grant to the possible need in our school district. The hardest part about grants is that, of course, they come with specifics that you have to follow. Naturally, we have to follow that. In this space here where it talks about virtual, in-person, and/or reading tutors, I believe we will be able to get our greatest bang for our buck in both spaces. And the grants may not necessarily cover the virtual space, but they may cover the in-person space, or vice versa. So I haven't looked into the shifting of grants in this space, but that doesn't mean that we can't look at what that actually looks like in the future.
Okay. Me personally, just speaking as Tia Johnson, concerned taxpayer, one of the things that I would like to see is perhaps a thorough study on the effectiveness of our instructional coaches, the number of instructional coaches, the locations of our instructional coaches, how much we're spending each year on instructional coaches, and the feedback from our classroom teachers of the effectiveness of the instructional coaches. I personally think our money would be much wiser if we're using it on tutors working with students. I understand instructional coaches do work with students, but that's not all they do. Vice President Nichols.
Yes, we have reached the hour of 8 o'clock, so I make a motion that we extend the business meeting by 30 minutes.
Second.
Motion by Vice President Nichols, seconded by Board Member Miller. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Our next, okay. Our next item is the referendum discussion, and perfect lead-in. Last meeting, the ad hoc committee presented us with a statement to the board with the 4 SMART goals as they pertain to the April referendum. And this will also, if any board members have other considerations or suggestions, any feedback they would like to give Dr. Garrison and the administration, we can do that. To refresh your memory of what the ad hoc SMART goals were, the district must, and I'm reading from the document that they presented last time, at the bottom of the first page, the district must assure that the community that they are working towards specific and measurable goals, and that the district needs to embrace frequent monitoring and reporting on progress. The community wants assurances that the funding received will be well spent and will achieve desired outcomes. We are recommending these priorities. 1, increase student outcomes in measurable ways utilizing SMART goals. Data shows that SDB students are not achieving on a statewide and national measures, as well as students in other districts in Wisconsin. Successful student outcomes will make our schools and community attractive, a better place to live for current and prospective Beloiters. 2, publicize positive things that are happening in the district. Beloiters need to be aware of the many successes that are occurring right now and demonstrate the return. 3, demonstrate the return on investment that will result from passage of the referendum. So Dr. Garrison, those are suggestions for you and the administration to work on. The SMART goals. SMART Goal 1, improve the efficacy of learning environments at schools and classrooms long-term by X% as measured by state report cards and other available assessment data by the time of the 26-27 reports. SMART Goal 2, improve the efficacy of the learning environment at schools and classroom annually by X% annually over the next 3 years as measured by an average of the following metrics: attendance/absenteeism, discipline referrals, teacher retention rates, and school data reports. 3, SMART Goal 3, reduce turnover among teaching staff to between X and X% of below the state average by the start of the 26-27 school year. And SMART Goal 4, increase salaries for staff to be within X% of other school districts for the 25-26 school year. Do any of the board members have any thoughts they'd like to share regarding the ad hoc SMART goals? Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. Just some clarification. I understand that you didn't author this, so maybe you or no one in this room is able to provide clarification. I'm all for SMART goals, absolutely. Is the ad hoc committee suggesting that we implement these SMART goals if the referendum passes, or in general implement these SMART goals?
My understanding is if the referendum passes, that these are things that they would like us to have as SMART goals aligned with the referendum.
Got it. Thank you for that. And I'm not a proponent for adding a meeting. However, I think a workshop would be appropriate so we can sit down with this as our singular focus. Because again, I'm all for SMART goals, but some portions of this seem vague to me, like assessment data, available assessment data. I mean, that could pretty much be anything. In the second SMART goal, school data reports. So I would be in favor of us having a workshop where this is our singular focus and we can really take this as a starting point and hone in a way that's appropriate for our district.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Levy. And in general, I would try to not add more meetings, but we are neck deep in meetings anymore. So, hey, one more. What's up, Mrs. Miller or Ms. Miller?
Okay. No, you're fine. Thanks. Yeah, no, it's okay. As I was sharing with Brian before our meeting started, I look forward to our meetings. It's it's a stimulating conversation. All in favor of that. So, okay. Love this in general. I'm very similar to Mrs. Levy's comments. I hadn't thought about suggesting a specific workshop, but I think that would be a great idea. And I guess what came to mind when I was reading this is a great continuation off of, when we were talking about board goals and we were, kind of hoping to get to that space where we could have a workshop and hear from administration about what makes sense in terms of what, X percentages and everything to monitor as well. So I think since none of us are school administrators or teachers in the school district of Beloit, it would make sense to sit down and craft those statements that were suggested specifically in a way that is realistic and that will produce the outcomes that I think are the intention, right, of the committee, which is to measure and promote student achievement, safety, et cetera. So I'm all in favor of that. I think this is fabulous work. I had a final thought and it totally just flew out of my head, so I'll just stop talking for everybody else's benefit. But no, I think this is great stuff. So I'm all in for a workshop.
Any other board members? Mr. Schneider?
I agree that this is important enough that we need to be able to take the time to really digest and to look at this and get advice from administration on the reality of what we're looking for, because part of the SMART goals means it has to be something that's actually achievable. And so we do need to take a look at that. I think just having a standalone time would be important.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Okay, I remember now. I was just going to say, sorry. Nothing gets me excited like strategic plans. And I know that we've spent a lot of time and energy and resources, as we should, working on developing the referendum question, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully everybody's going to be great and we're going to fully fund what we need to in April and then we can get out of survival mode. I think this is a fantastic jumping off point because we will have likely some sort of interim time between when our current strategic plan expires, which is fine. That's how it goes. It's good to be planful and thoughtful. I think this is fantastic. A, because it fits right in with our current strategic plan. B, because this has been generated through input of community stakeholders. C, because what Mr. Schneider just said, it's got to be measurable and achievable and make sure that we're producing the vision that the people who created these statements had in mind. So I just wanted to put this into the context of we're going to need a new strategic plan so we can kind of keep up the good work. This is a great next step.
Vice President Nichols?
No, I think it's good. Yeah, I know we're up to our, and by the way, neck for me is more than neck for you, just so you know. Anyway, no, I think it's a great start, and I SMART goals are good. I used to do those, so I think we should get together. Yes, thanks.
Okay, so we've got the SMART goals from the ad hoc committee, which we really appreciate their dedication and diligence. Were there any other considerations or feedback any board members have received from constituents or would like to share at this time? The one that I have is Dr. Garrison, if we could get specifics behind I can't believe I'm going to say this, the fourth bucket, the one that Vice President Nichols was referring to, if we could get specifics, I think that would help the cause a lot. On the website and in our presentations, I understand your concern for, needing to have some funds for, okay, things are going to go up and whatnot. That's a large amount of money. It's the over 50% of the request with not very many specifics behind that. And that's very concerning. And I think it would help a lot if we could do that.
Sure. Can I just ask something?
Certainly.
I think it's and the team and I have had conversations around this. One of the things that this bucket does have is that built-in uncertainties, and I think the public that could be explained in that bucket too. Like there's built-in uncertainties that this also captured that the board, of course, agreed to as well. The things that I listed that I was sharing with Mr. Nichols when he asked a similar question. The goal is probably to do like a pie chart with that information in it, and although we won't necessarily account for, we could account for all $20 million, but that doesn't mean that's how we're going to spend the $20 million based off of whatever needs come up. Let's just say with insurance hike, we built in 3%, but, at the end of the year, it could go to, if a referendum is successful, it can go to 10%. And this bucket will then, that number will be captured in that bucket. But if that's 10% in health, that means that there's less percent somewhere else. That makes sense? And so I agree with you. I think when we built this bucket, it was never to not to have any information in it. It was meant to be open-ended so that the people understand that running a school district is much more than just, of course, dollars and cents. It's a conglomerate of things, and this bucket also captures some of that. We also know that we have, some fund balance concerns in our district. When I say concerns, the reality is we will not be able to cover our fund balance with a referendum not being successful in time. And so these are real things, and I think what you just mentioned is something that we can bring to the table. I just don't want the board to hold, the school district accountable for if something crazy happens and we have to use those funding for something else that's not listed in the conversation, because this bucket is meant to be, all-encompassing to running a school district, and our needs are definitely there from a year-to-year perspective. Everything has continuously went up, and that bucket helps us, move our district forward. So I will work on that this week. There will be something online so people can see. That is the goal. I've mentioned that before, and we'll work to get that accomplished.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Thank you so much. Totally agree with all of that. And I guess just as I'm thinking about when you asked the question, any other stakeholder input, I will say in the context of exactly what you just said, 100% support all the things. I think as closely and as clearly as we can tie all of those pieces to direct impact on classrooms, the better. So for example, I heard you just now talking about fund balance, and I immediately am like, yeah, there's that special education transfer that we need. But I don't think that that's like exactly where everybody's mind goes when you hear fund balance. And so I think like when we say like, here's this pie chart, here's all these categories, I feel like we need to, as much as is possible, this directly affects services to kids in classes. That's like money for that paraeducator that's mandated by that IEP, right? I mean, that's not like, we're just gonna stash your tax dollars in our little savings account, right? Like this is stuff that directly goes to classrooms. Like you said earlier in your presentation, it's like $9.5 million a year from fund balance directly to student services for kids with special needs. That's just not where I think like everybody naturally goes. So love everything that the two of you just discussed. I think just also kind of couching that in, like, this is clearly and specifically how this directly impacts, like, what our teachers and kids experience in classrooms would be great.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. I couldn't agree with that more. And Dr. Garrison, again, I appreciate what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. That last bucket is more than 50% of the request. We have to be specific. If we need we need to have stable funding for the school district of Beloit. And have grave concerns if we leave that, even as a pie chart. I believe our constituents are able to grasp there might be an emergency. There might be something else we have to spend the money on. The request, what's written in the ballot, the dollar amount, that's done. We have wiggle room in what we're spending the money on, and I think the more specific we are, the more trust and the more transparent we are with what our intent is, with over 50% of the referendum, the more trust we will have, the more respect we will have. I don't see having more specifics being a negative in this case. And if something does come up and we have a catastrophic event, if there's an emergency, if we have incredibly high insurance costs, I have no problem going to our public and saying, folks, here's where we are. Something happened. We wanted to spend the money on this. Unfortunately, we can't. And I have no shame in that. It's how I budget my household. I don't have 50% in a slush fund for what might come. Okay, anybody else? Wonderful. Our next item then is the consent agenda. Typically, there is no separate discussion of the items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item or items will be removed from the general order of business and considered in their normal sequence on the agenda. And we have already removed 7F and 7G. Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. I'd like to remove item B as in boy and J as in Jackson.
Any other board members? Seeing and hearing none, I will entertain an approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item B and J.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Megan Miller. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mrs. Levy, item B.
Thank you so much. So late this afternoon, I saw the email for the January financial report that it had been updated and replaced. So I'm just asking for a highlight of the things that have changed since I last reviewed that report. Thank you so much.
And I apologize that I didn't touch on this in the earlier meeting. I had changed the number for the general fund revenues and the Fund 27 revenues because I had recorded a revenue in Fund 10 that should have been in Fund 27. And I'm sorry, I don't have my computer up, so I can't give you the exact dollar amount.
No, that's okay. I didn't have a chance to review the updated report, so if there were any significant changes, I just wanted to be made aware of that before we voted on it.
Yep, it was just between 10 and 27, and it did not affect the totals at the bottom.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the January 25th monthly financials?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Greg Schneider. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And item J, the memorial and Aldridge flooring needs. Again, Mrs. Levy.
Thank you for including the information, specifically the pricing summary sheet. Often in life, you get what you pay for. And so I'm wondering, were there conversations between the administration team and Marco's Commercial Interior Inc. and Flooring Inspirations to kind of determine why for the same job there was a just over $61,000 difference in the quotes?
Thank you, Board Member Levy, for that question. There were not any discussions. As spelled out in the RFP, there was a required walkthrough where all contractors were present. So bids were apples to apples. They all took the same measurements, agreed on the same concept plans. I've been told from my predecessors and other administrators who have held down capital projects that oftentimes these two contractors do bid very differently, one being much higher than the other. And again, the Makos is the former, that was formerly known as Halversons, which the district has used quite often on, I believe they did this floor in here. But to answer your question, long story short, no, I do see the very big difference there, but one just happens to be much lower, so.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure there are no red flags, like one company uses a different product that is safer or more good.
Nope, Mannington Flooring, they will be providing the materials, and they were also part of the walkthroughs. So both contractors that bid on the project are utilizing the same materials.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other questions for the flooring needs? I will entertain a motion for approval of J. Beloit Memorial and Aldridge flooring needs.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Megan Miller. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, we have the Human Resources and Employee Recommendations. Are there any open session questions on Exhibit A? Mrs. Levy.
Okay, so this is my disclaimer. It's an open question session that will let me know if we need to go into closed. I just had one quick question. Without divulging the content, the note in executive content is not aligned with the notes portion of Exhibit A. And I'm just wondering, is that something as simple as a copy-paste error, or do we need to go into closed to get clarification?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was a carryover from a previous agenda. Mrs. Schultz?
Then I don't have any questions. Thank you so much.
Any other board members have any open session questions on Exhibit A? Are there any closed session questions on Exhibit A? I will entertain a motion for approval of the HR employment recommendations, Exhibit A.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Megan Miller, seconded by Amy Levy. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to the agenda item 9, executive session. A motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to the employment, promotion, evaluation, and items. And because we already discussed the property negotiations, I don't see a need to read the exemption because we will not be discussing this in closed session. That was resolved during open session. Is there a motion to go into closed session for the exemption that I just read?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Brian Nichols, seconded by Megan Miller. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Mrs. Shope, may we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
and Tia Johnson,
Aye.
and Tom Hankins left the meeting. Motion carried unanimously.
The Board of Education may reconvene into public session in order to take any action, if necessary, on items discussed in closed session. Otherwise, we will be adjourning from closed session. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Have a good night and a wonderful week.